All right, everybody. Hey, it is Disclaimers by Ed Johnston, Saturday, May 30th, 2020. Now, today is a monumental day. I know everybody's been listening about these strong protests, also known as riots, but ignore the riots. Today is a monumentous day because SpaceX actually got 2 living men up into space, safe and sound. The Falcon ship went up. Dragon. No, the Falcon was the thing that came back. Basically, the ship went up, and they launched, and they're orbiting right now to go to the space station. So today is the first fully commercial passenger living cargo that went up. And with that, Ed, why don't you take it away?
Thank you. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us again. The one thing I like to bring up, because we've been having some very interesting times here ourselves, is how the banking structure works. And like I said, we've been opening up and getting into this stuff so people can see what we're talking about. And we're going to get into the banking structure a little bit tonight. And we've already been bringing up going into your straw man account. Or some people say, well, it's not your straw man account, but it depends on the way you want to look at it. Okay, and that's the point. It depends on the way one wants to look at it. It's not an argument, and that's the point, that it's not arguing over these issues. It's coming up with a situation of how do we get out of the control grip that these corporations have on us, and to be free. That's the whole point. Learn how to be free. So how do people learn how to be free? That's the problem we have right now. People don't know what freedom is. And if people actually knew what freedom was, we wouldn't have the problems we have right now if we were properly educated. But see, they can't educate you because then that way they can't control you. They can't destroy your lives. They can't sit there and, have your children all confused, like when they come home and they want to argue with you when they come home from school. And people don't get that point when they do this. And it's very disturbing when this happens around us, and this is the point that we have to do this stuff. This is our responsibility, not somebody else's, and that's the one thing. Nobody else is going to take this up and do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And so we're getting into, and I'm going to quote some of the stuff in the Banking Act. And so this way people comprehend what's going on. And that is the one thing that you have to realize what the circumstances are. You have to realize that what's going to be dealing with your circumstances. Remember, everything's a case-by-case situation. You can't throw everything under one roof and say that this is the way it is. That doesn't work that way. This is real life that we're dealing with. We're fictitious stories like we're seeing right now, we got to deal with the real life that we're living right now. And so it is interesting, of the circumstances. And so when we step out of the movie, we watch the production, it's like, how do we solve these issues? And it's so simple how to solve these issues, and then we're learning how to solve them. But the main thing is don't get wrapped up, like the host was talking about. Let's not get wrapped up in all these riots and stuff because, the things were meant to happen. These things were already predicted to happen. It's one of those things that we're going to be living with. So if we don't stand up, what future do your children have? And see, you got to look at your children on these circumstances. Not everybody has kids. Not everybody was fortunate enough to have kids in their life. And so you got to consider that point with the ones who don't have kids compared to the ones that do, like you. And so separate the situation, and that's the main point, that we got to learn how to separate the situation of these circumstances. And so it is really frustrating when it does come down to it. And so this is the one thing, is like everybody's panicking with churches not reopening and all this stuff. Well, see, the thing is that we're being told how to live. You already got martial law. Folks, wake up. They're telling you that you can't fart in the wind without sitting there, without being accused of it. Everybody farts. Who cares? But now we're getting to the point where it's getting so extreme. I've been watching the riots the last 48 hours on the stuff going on, and it has been quite, in some respects, horrifying because, you got to look at what these public service, elected and public employees are going through. I mean the honorable ones. I'm not talking about the crooked ones. I'm not talking about the ones that are out there doing the BS that is destroying our country. I'm talking about honorable elected and public servants, because we do have honorable who honor their oath of servitude. And see, that's the one thing that people got to remember. We do have public employees that actually honor their service. Excuse me, and that's our responsibility to help them, guide them. It's our responsibility, yours responsibility as well as mine. Because if we don't do this and protect them, who's going to protect us? Yeah, we got Smith & Wesson, we got Ruger, we got whatever else, but then the other point, we got to look at how we have to look. Do we have to look over our shoulder with our neighbor? You know, are we supposed to be living in this type of fear? We're not supposed to be living in this type of fear. So when people are out there stirring the pot and don't know what's going on and stirring up the pot just to keep the things going, or their paychecks going, or, you know, I mean, paychecks going, that's like elected and public employees with false allegations and stuff. And see, that's the one thing, is learning how to file the criminal charges on these people. And I mean criminal charges. You know, it's like the Floyd when he got murdered. I don't consider that a homicide. I consider that bluntly murder, what they did to that man. You know, I mean, that's simple. You can just tell by the video, you know, the way it happened. I mean, he was already handcuffed, you know, and then they bluntly, cold-bloodedly murdered him. See, and this is the point that when it comes down to that, we're supposed to be able to defend ourselves, and when people do this, we're not, you know, we're supposed to be able to handle it right then and not go to a court. And so if it was handled properly, you know, I pity that cop and his family and the other 4 cops that were actually involved in that situation, because he got 4 other cops that stood around him and didn't do anything. And so they're guilty as murder, co-conspiracy of murder, as the guy who actually did it. It's just that simple. It was plain cold-blooded murder. And so when we're going through this stuff and we have these problems that we're living in this stage, okay, the problem is so sad that we have to live this point, and our kids have to watch this stuff. And then, you know, this guy's family, Floyd's family, you know, what recourse do they have? So I'm trying to get a handout out there, because I would actually, you know, probably write the guy's suggestion on some ways that his family could go after these people. And then they need to file criminal charges on them. Literally, the cops involved need criminal charges. And I know they've been fired, but they need to be criminally charged with murder, not homicide. That was cold-blooded murder. And so, you know, it's simple to define these things, you know, from a homicide to an accidental situation. So this was not accidental. This definitely was deliberately done to that man. You could tell. You could just see the way it was done. So when it comes down to these things, instead of, you know, arguing about this stuff like so many people want to argue about it, how come we're not standing up and defending this stuff? And that is the one thing that I just can't comprehend, how these people are getting away with this stuff. So, but anyhow, I wanted to get into some of the banking structure, seeing that we're going through this and we're figuring out the corporation of how to write off your structure. And the one thing, too, is I want to get over here. I want to pull this up for a minute because I want to read this thing, because I'm putting out my letters now. I've had a change of different directions that realize that we have to put our letters together. You know, are you a combatant? Are you a non-combatant? What part of the country are you from? Are you part of the inside of the United States, within the United States, outside the United States? And remember, the United States is a corporation, and under Title 28.3002, it's still under the Queen of England, of the King of England. See, this is the thing that people don't realize, how England still has their grasp on you, but you don't have to play the game. Don't have a credit card. Don't go in debt. Don't borrow money. It's that simple. You know, it really is that simple. People say, well, I can't live without this. Yes, you can. You know, you really can. Or the way when I grew up, you didn't have credit cards. We went out and got his job, and we went out and earned it. And then that way we were able to buy it. So, but anyhow, we're non-combatant. We're non-belligerent. We are lawful bloodline natives of the 48 states. There's no 50 states. Alaska, Hawaii, and is not part of the United States. That's part of the corporation. Alaska is still owned by the Queen of England of 1859. So it's like really researching and doing your history of who owns what the circumstances. And remember, we had immigrants to come over to this country and put a stick in the ground and said, oh, now we own it. Well, I can't come into your home and put a stick in your living room and tell your woman to go cook me food. It wouldn't work that way. And so when people are allowing this to happen, it's like, it's sad that we're in this stage today. So, and the one thing, too, is remember, under Title 18 U.S.C. 3771, you have to be a corpus electa. You have to be the injured party. Name-calling and sticks and stones is not name-calling. That's not injury. We're supposed to be grown up, and we're not supposed to be arguing about little tat-for-tat things. You know, so, and that's the one thing what's going on here in the future. Grow food, collect rainwater. Learn how to can food. I believe canning is a must. I think that the kids should be learning canning in the schools and at home. Because, like right now, you know, we don't even know what's going on in the meat market, what's coming down the road here. You know, because, I mean, I'm watching different meat companies that have been shutting down. I've talked to different ranchers that are not selling to restaurants anymore. They're taking personal orders. So, and I mean, they weren't going to the, you know, they were commercial to restaurants, and now they were going to personal orders. So we're going to be looking at restaurants that are still closing down. We've already got that where a lot of restaurants, especially on the West Coast here in Oregon Territory, that are not opening up. They are closed down permanently. And this is the saddest part, that we're really living in the circumstances. And so when it comes down to it, I want to bring this to everybody's attention still. The Indian treaties are the law of this land. You know, everybody keeps going, you know, we have the two constitutions. We do, because we're still fighting the British government, foreigners, terrorists that are coming into our country. And people don't have a right. This country is not open to the world. See, that's the one thing that disturbs me when people go ahead and they think that this world's open. This country's open to the world. We are open to our people. The world is their issues, their circumstances. The world is not our problem. You know, like I said before, we have 7 restaurants in the United States serving cannibal meat right now. Human meat, cadaver meat, human living meat. And the one thing, too, is if you look at the law, anybody who wants to give their body over to somebody else for food cannot be charged. You know, there's no murder on that one. You sell your body or whatever for somebody else to eat, you can do that. You know, and that's the one thing that is shocking to people, but it's a fact. It's a reality. It does happen. So when it comes down to the circumstances we are living today, what is our future? And so that is the one thing that you got to realize. And also, too, to clarify, under 3028 USC 3002, if you actually read it, the Indian treaties are to be paid. When the Bankruptcy Act happens, the money that is collected is supposed to go to the Indian nations, the Indian people themselves. And that's in the actual law. And I've posted that up. I brought that up. And so we'll get that out. It's already up. I believe that's already on the website. And so you get to read this stuff. And that's the one thing, is to prove who you are. You have to prove that you are a living man and woman on this soil. You know, you have to prove that you're on this soil. You cannot prove that, you know, if you can't prove that you're on this soil, you have no rights. And you have to prove you're 5 or more generations. And it says that in the laws that we've been putting up. I put that in a few other administrative rules out there, and that's the one thing that people got to realize. You know, you have to prove your standing. So in the circumstances what we're getting into, banks and cities and counties and states cannot own property. And I encourage you to read Title 12. Okay, and I'm posting this up. We'll have this up after tonight after the show. I'll put these links in with the banks, the administrative rules, and their laws. Because this is the one thing that people think, oh, the banks can do this. They can foreclose on my home. No, they cannot. You know, a city and county cannot take your property, only unless you walk away and abandon it, and that's what they hope you do. You know, that's the situation that they want you to do, and that's the one thing that I'm working on, I will have filings on this coming up here shortly on this, so people can sit there and start filing on the banks. But you have to file on the bank manager. You have to file on the bank employee. I don't care if it's the clerk. You file on the clerk. Because people say, oh, the clerk's the innocent victim. No, it's not, because the clerk is making an income off of that stolen property. So there's no innocent men or women in a situation. You know, when your property and your personal assets and your children are being stolen, there's no innocence. And so that's the one thing. And then, you know, then you got these other people say that you can't own property in America. Yes, you can. You can't own property in the United States incorporation, technically. But this is the point of reading what the administrative rules are and the actual laws are versus statute codes and administration. And so it is learning how to protect your bloodline. It's your bloodline that has to be protected, not mine. You know, otherwise on the outside. But the main point is that, you know, I don't have heirs, so that's my situation of life, and some of us don't have it, and that's just the way it turned out for us. So like I said, and then Title 12, I want to get you into Title 12. I would like you guys to take some time, and we'll be posting it up tonight on Title 12 with the bankruptcy. We're going to get into the currency structure, because currency, when it comes down to it, this is the main thing, is what's the term of currency? And that is the one thing, that knowing how to look this stuff up, knowing how to realize what the words say. And that's the one thing that you need to sit there and comprehending what these words mean. And if you have to take a regular dictionary and look it up, you know, and don't forget the Black Law Dictionary and all this stuff we have. It was set up as an original joke. That was the one thing that people don't get. That was set up as a joke. That was set up in England as a joke. And so then they brought their troubles over to our country. You know, and so when they did that, now we're living in this structure of the living hell. You know, if they would have just left it in their country and didn't bring it to our country, we wouldn't be going through this craziness or these riots and stuff like this that they're doing. And so under currency, you know, an exchange. So you have middle exchange and dealing with federal exchange. You know, how are you going to do your currency banking? Now, see, that's the one thing that, you know, we're looking at this, and then the one thing that we plan on putting up, we'll get I don't know if anybody beside me and the chief are familiar with Patrick Devine, but we're going to get some of his stuff, and that's the one thing that we're watching his stuff, reading his stuff. We know that people have gone out and been able to get the resources. But to see, you got to learn how to play the game correctly. You know, you don't want to file the wrong paperwork. You don't want to get involved in the circumstances where they're coming after you. You want to be able to be on the same place as these elected and public servants where they're protecting you, not to be interfered with. And believe me, they will. You know, when you start clarifying and claiming your status, they do protect you. They do stand up. You know, I mean, I've been in situations around where, you know, things happen around you, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're sitting in the middle of stuff, and they'll sit there and tell you you're not supposed to be here, or get out of here. You know, when a public servant tells you to get out of the situation, walk away. Don't get drugged into their corporation structure, because they're doing that for income. So you got to remember, income is more important for their survival than you are. Because that's how they feed their kids. That's how they get their medical insurance, their doctor's insurance, I mean, their, you know, driver's license, and that's how they keep their system going. And that's the one thing. It's up to you if you want to be in their system. So, and then currency comes from the term of the middle structure of English word. And it has part of Latin in it. And, you know, it's like currency, Japanese yen, and it depends on the way, which way you want to do it. I mean, currency could even be sticks. Remember, in currency, they used to use shells and beads. So it depends on the circumstances of currency, of what the circumstances of what your area wants to do. And remember, you can all make your own currency, too. But it has to be accepted by anybody you're trading with. And so it's one of those situations, who's going to take what currency and how they're going to try take it and deal with it. And remember, when they try to claim that, income tax and federal structure, we own the income tax. We, the natives, own this stuff. And so it is filing your paperwork, doing this stuff correctly. And that is the one thing that, we're watching things hitting faster than what's going on. And, we're still filing our paperwork. We're trying to get this stuff set up, or we're trying to get it set up so that way you comprehend what's going on as well. And we want to make sure that you get this reality as well as we are getting this reality. That's why we're bringing this knowledge to you. And like I said, I'll be posting this stuff up. We can walk you through, and we're going to get through that a little sooner when we bring in one of the guests. But I want to bring the point to you that you need to read this. You need to comprehend it, even though we can walk you through this stuff. But if you don't comprehend it, it's not going to do any good. For you or us. Because the whole thing about proper education is so we're educating each other. And so that's the one thing that, Title 12, I do recommend you start getting into that. And especially learn and read what the reserve banking is, the reserve banking system is. And next week I will have a couple 2-minute videos that one's 3 and one's 6 minute. We'll throw them up because I want you to listen to not only what we're bringing to your attention and bringing you these administrative rules. Remember, these are administrative rules, statute codes, or whatever you want to call them, but they're administrative rules. They're not the Constitution. And that's the one thing that people need to realize, that you need to separate the Constitution from administrative rules or foreign agency contracts. And that's the one thing, because tomorrow, I guess, we're going to find out what the 1938 Foreign Affairs Act, Foreign Registration Act, is supposed to expire allegedly tomorrow. So I plan on paying attention to that this week to see what's going to happen, or see what Trump might have to do with it, because Trump has to reopen that and extend it. And so we're going to have to see what's going to happen with that this week. And so that's the one thing I do recommend our listeners, research that too, because that affects you. Because if that goes away, remember, the FAIR Act is what protects us from our foreign agents called elected and public employees. And the one thing is that, with all the circumstances, like everybody's panicking with the teachers, might be losing their jobs. Well, when everybody's homeschooling, what's the point of teachers? I do get the point, we need other educators out there, but it depends on who's the education, because our school system, the last 30 years has failed us, because they haven't taught education. They haven't taught the kids how to be responsible and learning. They've created excuses for everybody to get out of things. And that's the problem. Everybody's got an excuse. Everybody wants to say, I don't have to deal with this. And that's the problem with the circumstances of what we're living today. We all have to deal with this. It's like I have to pay attention to the neighbors, what my kids do in my neighborhood. And that is the point, that, paying attention to what's going on in your neighborhood. Most people don't do that. It's sad when, the last 15 years, well, actually the last 25 years, I watched everybody become so seclusive. People have come all about me, instead of taking care of helping somebody. I was one of those guys where I grew up and somebody needed a coat and I had a coat, I'd give them a coat. You could always get another one. But we get so wrapped up in the me stuff, it's just so crazy. It really is crazy. So it's learning how to do this stuff, and it is so frustrating when you bring this stuff up and you got these other people out there trying to contradict what you're doing. And please, folks, when you're listening to people from overseas, be careful who you're listening to, especially when you're watching through these people that are saying, I can be the secure creditor party. Read the history of them. Read what they've done. Read why they are not in their own house. Read why they're lost everything. that you want to deal with people that are secure on their property. Oh, on their soil. You know, property is men and women. They own each other. Property is your TV, your radio. Okay, but soil is what you grow food on. You collect rainwater you can live on. You know, you can barter property to live on, but it only goes so far. But food and water, without that, none of us survive. None of that lives. And that's the one thing on the West Coast. We got the problems with the radiation with Fukushima still leaking. Fukushima just let out another 1 billion gallons of radiation out there, and they just came out with a news flash on it last week that they let more of the radiation out of the channels there, and they're talking about blowing it up. So if they blow up the one reactor that's still leaking, oh my God, you just can't imagine what that's going to do to the food resources. And then you got these people out there that are going, oh, well, it doesn't hurt it because the radiation dissolves in 10 years or 20 years. I don't know where these people get their scientific evidence or their intelligence from. But nuclear waste takes 1,000 years if it ever goes away. And they know that, and they're talking about trying to build nuclear plants, more nuclear plants. We don't want nuclear plants. Hydro is the safest way to go. And people go, oh, that affects the fish and stuff. Well, you got dams, all right? Now you put fish ladders in, you do it correctly to keep your food resources. People are not intelligent enough to realize that. How do you expect to eat tomorrow if you don't raise your food resources? You know, I mean, our salmon and trout and stuff like this, we have, like in Oregon, we have ODF&W, you have your Department of Fish and Wildlife in your incorporated states. Get on their case. Make sure they're putting food back into the rivers and streams because that's your life. But they want you to go to the grocery store. They want you to be dependent. And see, once you become dependent, that's what we're going through right now. I mean, the outbreak right now, everybody's been dependent on this stuff. Everybody's been in their homes for the last 90 days. You know, and then we're wondering why things are happening. Well, you've been caged in. You got caged in animals. Remember, human is an animal. Title 7. What is that, 126, Section D, we're all animals. We haven't changed. So you can call us human, but we're still an animal, and we got to eat, so we'll do anything. And it's really sad with the cannibalistic stuff that's going on in our country right now, because we are getting more and more into cannibalistic. And that's the one thing people are not comprehending, that their cannibalistic is that deep, that hard, that structure. And that's a reality. It really is that reality. So, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, plant food, grow food. Because if we all start being called cannibals, I mean, you know, we're going to be, you know, start killing each other in the street like they're doing with the riots right now. I mean, it's interesting they're burning up police departments, you know, going after public employees. Some of them, yeah, well. But then again, with the honorable ones, that's the ones we need to work with and protect. Because we do have honorable elected and public servants. And remember, their job is to serve you. And that's the point that we're going through with the Bankruptcy Act, and we're going through with the Banking Act, and we're going through this, walking through how to go through using your W-9 forms, your W-10 forms coming up, you know, how to write off your water, electricity bill, how to start owning land, how to do this stuff. We're breaking into it really deep now. And so we're posting some of that stuff up, but, you know, I wanted to get the stuff out for you guys to read because we like to get your feedback, too. When we post this stuff up, like every week, we like to get your feedback, you know, on what you're reading, what your thoughts is, how we can collaborate this stuff to make sure that, you know, you're able to be secure on a piece of soil compared to in some apartment building. Because nobody likes neighbors. You know, when it comes down to it, I mean, that's the one thing I was so glad to get out of the, you know, apartment structure where I grew up in the, you know, as a kid, you know, neighbors stomping up and down the floors and that stuff. And so we do have these circumstances that we are opening this up. We are getting more knowledge. And without knowledge with each other, remember, this is all about, it's not about me, 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 me. And when people get into the me, me, me structure, we lose the point of how do we survive because we're supposed to live in peace and harmony. You know, and peace and harmony, you know, is like, you know, we can sit there and say, no offense to the religious people. Well, it's like people keep saying God's going to come. Well, it's been 2,000 years. Why are we still living in hell? Well, the other point is we've been programmed to live in hell because we never were properly educated. We don't know the circumstances of the real truth. And that is the problem that we have going right now. And that is the main point, is getting this knowledge out to you as well as to ourselves and do this. So when we start putting the other pieces of the puzzle together, we're getting this done. And like I said, I've got it filed in my state once we start getting the structure to start writing the water and electricity bill. I already got filed with the Utility Commission ready to do this stuff, but I got to do it so I don't put myself or you in a conflict of interest. And in that way, the state already said that they will do what they can do, so that way they're not in a conflict of interest. And if you don't know what a conflict of interest is, please read it. We'll send you the deal. That's the one thing I'm working on, and we want to make sure that people get this done in each and every state, and I'll have a template up here shortly on this one. Because when you have grand juries, the grand jury is the only ones that will be in court. A judge is not supposed to be in a courtroom, and by their administrative rules, a judge technically can only be a mediator, cannot be involved in the court process. And that's their administrative rules, but that's the point is that judges are not even supposed to be in the court. It's like when I did my talk show running for office 3 weeks ago. I brought up the fact that, that's right, sheriffs cannot be outside a courtroom. And Commissioner Hall says, well, everybody, the people want the sheriffs on the street and the police department on the street. Well, we don't want them out there rape, robbing, and pillaging from us because we have a contract with them under public trust where they're supposed to be protecting us, protecting our families. I remember the days when the kids used to go out and get drunk and stupid 30, 40 years ago. Cops didn't haul you off to jail. They brought you home to your parents. Most kids are more terrified going home to deal with their parents than they were going to jail. And I remember those days watching kids pleading to the cops, going, take me to jail, I don't want to go home. Because, they're more worried about getting their ass whipped than they were about anything else. See, that's the frustration we live today. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with that? So, and that is the one thing. We have the tools that are coming into our hands, and that's the point, is how do you utilize those tools? Those religious people say, well, God's given you the tools to teach you, so learn from them. I look at it from man's point of view because, we're the ones doing the research, the living man and woman. So, and it is bringing this stuff up. And so I have responded, and also, too, I'd like to thank the new 80 members that we have on our Facebook sites this week. We've been growing on an average of 75 to 140 people a week paying attention. Some of our sites we've already hit on my Facebook site. It's already hit over 1.5 million people that have hit on my Facebook. So people are listening to what we're out there talking. People are listening to what we're saying. But it comes down to that we have to be responsible for ourselves in our own education, and that means when we're doing this stuff and bringing it to your table, is that you need to realize and read those things. And if you have a conflict of interest on the stuff that's being brought out, please speak up. Because the only way we learn from each other is by learning from one another. It's not being programmed into some state corporation. And remember the state, city, county, and state. Those are government agencies. They don't care about you. Majority of those public employees in the major structure don't care about you. The little peons, they do. But the thing is getting majority of them to work together with them so that way they start working. We can work together because we can save our country. I don't get into the elections department situation except right now I'm running. But, Trump's doing a very interesting job. And if you don't realize that Trump gave back 30% of this country back to the natives. He has given it back to the natives. So you get all these people yelling and screaming about Trump doing this, especially Pelosi and these Democrats. Well, they're losing because Trump is giving back our country back to us, the natives. You know, when he shut off the borders and everybody's panicking on that. Well, you don't have a right to come into somebody else's house and say we have a right to live. You know, all these immigrants and all these other stations going, we have a right to come to your country. We want these freedom. We want these rights. Well, you live in where you're at. You were born there. If you believe in God, isn't that what God gave you? See, that's the conflict that I go with people with that, you know. If they believe in something, you know, you've got to deal with that. How come those people haven't stood up to their government, their country? You know, Fidel Castro and, I can't remember the other Cuban guy. He was the one that they were putting back their country by oil and stuff. They weren't going by the Rothschilds and Fairchilds and international banks. So you don't want to get into the international banking system. You know, and that's the one thing you want to stay away from them. And everybody keeps talking about, well, you have to bring international back to do this stuff. No. Technically, if you look at international laws are outside of the United States. Unincorporated. Not the United States, Inc., under Title 28.3002. The people lump all this stuff in together without separating the real issues, and that's the problem that we have. People are not paying attention to the real issues. And so you got all these people out, like, you know, we were on a talk show with this guy from England a couple weeks ago, you know, and secured creditor and all this stuff, and it's like, we didn't see anything out of his circumstances. He's still living in England and still doesn't have anything. And so that's the point. We want to make sure that you keep your stuff, and that's the point of being, and we're blessed that we're in the United States. You know, and that's the one thing when you do speak, you know, I'm not a combatant. I'm unincorporated. I don't live in a corporation. And people say, well, I do business, and that's commerce, and you have to be that. No, that's not true. If you're native, that's not commerce. That's called barter. So wording is the most important word of learning what wording means and the symbols of these words. So with that, we're going to open up the floor. I didn't want to get into it because I wanted to get in a couple other things with one of the other guys tonight that's joining us. So we're going to open up the floor. We'll go from there at this point. We'll see who's got the first comments, and then we'll bring in the other guy. Go ahead.
All participants are unmuted.
So,
May I?
Yes, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Electric storm right now.
Yeah, I heard that.
Did you hear about Seattle and Portland being closed down tonight?
Yes.
Yep.
Martial law.
Yep, starting at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Okay, yeah, and people got to pay attention to that because they're forcing martial law because they're panicking because after not only did Floyd get murdered, but there was 2 other people up in New York City that got almost beaten to death in the last 24 hours by cops. So it's shocking what's going on because these cops are out there thinking that, you know, they're protecting something when they're assaulting people and they're not protecting anything. So go ahead. Anybody else would like to add something in? And then I'll bring you in, Chief. Cool. So anybody else would like to add something? Not at this point. Okay, go ahead. Let's go ahead. Okay. So you there, Chief?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's go ahead what we were talking about, and then anybody who would like to interrupt or say to bring in something in the conversation as we talk, so we're not running the floorboard, is always say, you know, may I, or excuse me, or my chip, or, you know, my turn to talk. So, I mean, the whole thing is about being respectful of one another because we have to learn from each other. So, Chief, let's get off where we were at. So why don't we finish the part of the conversation we were at and then see what anybody else would like to add.
Okay, so, well, I'm going to add in on what you were talking about earlier. Okay.
Yep.
So currency, coined money, and such banknotes or other paper money as authorized by law and do in fact circulate hand to hand as the medium of exchange. See also blocked currency, comptroller of currency, legal tender. So let's pop on over and see the Comptroller of Currency. The Office of the Comptroller of Currency was created by Act of Congress approved February 25th, 1863. 12, Statute 665. As an integral part of the national banking system, the Comptroller is the administrator of national banks, is responsible for the execution of laws relating to national banks, and promulgates rules and regulations governing the operations of National and District of Columbia banks. Approval of the Comptroller is required for the organization of new national banks, conversion of state chartered banks into national banks, consolidations or mergers of banks where the serving institution is a national bank, and the establishment of branches by national banks. Now, let's go to legal tender, because we all love to see the legal tender one. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, that's the other conversation I have with everybody. You know, oh, it's legal tender, but it's like when you talk legal, remember that still falls back on the Corporation of England as legal. Go ahead, Jake.
Okay, so where am I? Legal tender, coin and paper money which are declared by law to be good and sufficient for payment of public and private debts. All coins and currencies of the United States, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve banks and national banking associations, regardless of when coined or issued, are legal tender for all debts, public and private, public charges, taxes, duties, and dues. 31 U.S.C. Statute 392. So now let's go to money. Money's my favorite one. Money, in usual and ordinary acceptation. It means coins and paper currency used as circulating medium of exchange and does not embrace notes, bonds, evidence of debt, or other personal or real estate. See also currency, current money, fiat money, legal tender, near money, script, wampum. What's wampum? Oh yeah, that's a native term. A medium of exchange authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government as a part of its currency. U.S.C. or UCC Statute 1-201-24. So that's kind of backing you up on what you were saying about money. And that's the interesting thing, is money is a little bit different than actual legal tender. So public money revenue received from federal, state, and local governments from taxes, fees, fines, etc. See revenue. So I kind of wanted to touch base on that since you popped those up in there.
Go ahead and hit that. Let's hit you hit the revenue now, or the other one first?
I was going to try the fiat if I can find it real quick, because I'm going through, believe it or not, Black's Law Dictionary number 5.
Yeah, I know.
And
remember, Black Law Dictionary was first written was by the jokers that were entertaining the king and queen back then.
So fiat money is a short one here. It says paper money which is not backed by gold or silver but issued by order of the government, also called fiat money. See Federal Reserve notes. Now let's go into that one. Let's see, where am I? Federal. Oh no, here we go.
You know, we're going to get somebody going, well, you guys weren't prepared on this one. But, you know, that's part of what goes on. I'm trying to find this other one. Go ahead.
Form of currency issued by the Federal Reserve banks in the likeliness of non-interest-bearing promissory note payable to bearer on demand. The Federal Reserve note, e.g. 1, 5, 10, etc., dollar bill, is the most widely used paper currency. Such have replaced silver and gold certificates, which were backed by silver and gold. Such reserve notes are direct obligations of the United States. So, with that, I guess... So, you know, anything you want, I got a few little Black Laws Dictionary to look things up. But like you said, if you really want to go through this, you probably want to get like a Webster's Dictionary, old versions. We've been told if you get something between, you know, the early 1926s and before, you probably comprehend things a little bit better.
Right, and I think we actually have that on the new.Oregon Tracker website, and that's new.OregonTrackers.org or .com. And so don't be bashful to go there and ask. And by the way, we've been getting quite a few emails from people that are going there. I've been responding to quite a few comments and stuff like this, back and forth. We do appreciate your comments and your contacting us and bringing that bringing the learning so that you still want to learn, and we're willing to work with that. Go ahead, and then I'll bring in another point. Go ahead.
Well, the other one was the actual original banking industry that was here is actually the post office itself.
That's what I was going to get into, and the post office by law has to carry gold and silver in each one. They were the payee masters for the military.
The other one is there's actually two banking versions inside the post office, one that's connected to what's known as your straw person, okay, or straw man, straw woman. The other one actually...
No, it's not straw man or woman. It's person, because man or woman is living. Person is an inanimate object.
Well, and then that's where the other one comes in. It actually gives it back to the lawful bloodline women and men.
Right.
And that's the thing that we're trying to figure out now. We're going through some racking our brains, and trust me, it's like we eat, sleep, and read, which that's part of this issue. You know, when you get into this, it's deep. You know, it is a rabbit hole, and it's got many avenues when you climb in it, but that's the whole idea. It's not for everybody to know. There's some people, if you ever watch the movie The Matrix, where Morpheus is sitting down with Neo, he states, you know, there's some people that just will not get out of that matrix. They will kill, maim, and do whatever is necessary to keep themselves involved in it, because that's the only life they've known.
That's their security.
Yeah. And then that's the other one. You brought up Title 12, which Section Statute 411 is really how to change money. And if you look at a dollar bill, any currency type of dollar bill, you're going to notice on the left-hand side, which is so funny, it's black. There's a black seal on it. Okay, that's the dead man's note. That's your straw person. Okay, what you want to do is get it to the other side, which is the actual green seal. That would also come back to the greenbacks from way back when. And, you know, that's the interesting thing, is we're trying to figure out how to actually do that. We've got most of the forms. We're still searching information on that because, like he says, we want to be, you know, as comprehensive as possible and as complete as possible to help people out on these things. Because once you do this, you really do become the bank. Okay, but a couple weeks ago when we were on that show, there was some good stuff mentioned. One of the guys on there mentioned that a woman had actually borrowed $1 trillion to give to the bank. So we believe, we're not totally sure yet, but we believe what's happening is there's a restructure going on. We already know the Fed's been combined with the Treasury. So we see something that's going on. We're praying that, you know, that things are going to, you know, step up, and we're going to see what's going on with that. We're trying to keep our ear to the railroad track to hear it coming. And, you know, the sad part is the left is not going to give it up. You know, that's what's going on here. It's really sad that somebody had to die. But if you haven't noticed, there's been some speculation that Soros, I mean, Minneapolis said that people have been bussed in there. Dallas put out today that there was a whole bunch of pallets of bricks left along the road for where they were going to protest, yet there's no construction going on. So, and then ironically, Soros's money went from $361 billion to $309 billion for some strange reason. So, but yeah, that's kind of the thing that we're trying to get into. Where, you know, we know that Trump's trying to do something with the Postal Service because it's dropped, and theoretically, my opinion is that the money should be flowing back through the Postal Service, since it is backed by gold and silver, and the banks are not. That somehow we need to get the banks involved with the Postal Service. And, you know, if people don't know, I actually used to be a person that picked up all the paperwork at the banks throughout the area of where I live in. And then I had taken to Baltimore, Maryland, to the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, and what that is they're checking how the money's spent, how and where it's going, how it's going about, who's doing what. Now, the problem there is, as a courier, you know, if you're late, they charge you. And believe it or not, it was $10,000 a minute you were late. And trust me, I had to beg for a whole lot of forgiveness one night because there was a traffic jam. And, you know, the fact that I could actually prove that there was a traffic jam, they relieved me of the 30 minutes. Because think about that, 30 minutes at $10,000 a minute. I was in some deep crap. And one guy was a little upset because he needed his adjusted. He had over $66,000 going in. Now, money is not made by days, weeks, and months and years anymore, okay? That is at your banking situation. The way the big players play it, it's seconds, minutes, and hours. So, and that's the thing. What we really should be funneling to instead of the Federal Reserve is funneling it through the postal system back into the Federal Reserve. And the postal system, since it's backed by gold and silver, it would make it allodial money. Right now, there is really nothing backing it but the people themselves. You know, so when you say you're not worth anything, don't say that. Please don't say that. Because
everybody's worth something. That's a fact.
Well, and you see, that's the thing. It's really from the birth certificate and the Social Security number. The birth certificate, you know, is actually, they had to do this in a monetary situation so that they could create funds because supposedly it was a bankruptcy. It's not for this continent or this country, nation, however you want to put it. I like to use continent because the first word in the continent is soil.
Right.
Okay, so the continent here needs to be revamped. The machine's kind of broke. We got to fix this machine, and we got to help out, you know, and we should all do our part. You know, going out here enslaving is putting us further in debt. Instead, we need to learn how to work the system properly to get the money to be real again. So, you know, and people are right. You know, it's hard to keep a pocket full of change. I don't know anybody had that.
Your birth certificate is paying you for your employment in most cases.
Exactly. That's where the W-4 and the W-2 paperwork actually comes in. And then, you know, that's just it. When we were taught in school, they taught us the ABCs, not the alphabet. Well, 1099-A is actually a tax form, and the A stands for abandonment. 1099-B is the banker's note. 1099-C is the claimant to get the abandonment back. Now, this much we've learned, and a lot of people out there know these things. It would be nice if we could get them to join in. Our biggest thing is that we want to work with other people. We just wish people could get by their egotistical issues and, you know, agree to disagree, and let's move forward and get things done. You know, and we're doing the best we can. And we ask for a little bit of help. You know, it's not a monetary thing. We're actually asking if you can put in a little time. You know, can you get on a computer, you know, and look things up? We're easy about that. And the sooner we get it all done, the sooner it actually works out for anybody.
Right. As soon as we get it all done, we could all sit there and live a little happier and travel and go play.
Well, and that's really the way it is. I mean, the way it's described, I mean, if you listen to Patrick Devine's stuff, okay, one of the things he says, it's not just heaven up in the heavens. It's supposed to be heaven on earth. And I don't know about you, but the way I'm looking at the world right now with all the riots and everything going on, this isn't heaven on earth. You know, this is a war thing going on, and that's the thing we've got to get past. The war pig type of era of life is over. The Matrix style of life, well, that's going to go on for a little bit until we figure it out, and that's what we're all trying to do. And I really appreciate everybody putting in their thought process. I don't know the May I guy's name, but the Vulture book was fantastic. Thank you for forwarding that. Because I read that, and man, you did a beautiful job in that. You just did an absolute beautiful job. But yeah, you know, that's where we're headed to. We're trying to figure out how to help. You know,
well, I want to add something to the Vulture book, and this is the one thing that people don't get, but the guy who wrote the book really comprehended. You know, you got to sit there and realize when you're going into court, which court you're going in and how to respect the court for him to do his job, him or her. Okay? And once you start realizing that the public servant has an obligation, and I get hard on public servants, and I don't deny that. You know, everybody knows that, and sometimes I get people that call me up or email me going, back off, man, what are you doing this, or why are you going in that direction? You know, but see, the whole point is about getting proper education so we're not arguing and fighting on it. So when you go to court, you have to know your standing. You have to know who you are when you go to court. You know, you have to know if you're lawful or legal. And that's the point, that legal is a foreign corporation. Lawful means you have rights. And it is stepping out of the metrics and watching for the factual truth compared to what we're led to believe. And that is the one thing. What are you led to believe? What do you know? How much are you willing to learn? How much are you willing to spend the time to do this? And remember, nobody's going to sit there and do this. I mean, I've watched people, and I've known people that have gone to a lot of people that have gone out and paid, hundreds or even sometimes thousands of dollars for these people to go do their court cases. And that's the one thing. I've watched people that do the court cases, and then, they don't want to listen, and then all of a sudden they're calling me back going, I need this, I need that. And I said, we just sent this guy $1,500 or $500 or $750. What happened? Oh, well, he didn't do this, and he didn't do that, or she didn't do this, or she didn't do that. And it's like, but see, now we're 3 or 4 weeks or 6 months behind. I thought you already had this done. See, that's the one thing you got to realize when you're sitting out there doing this. What are you doing for yourself? What are you making sure that's a reality? And that is the one thing that working on these things. And yes, we do want to give the gentleman who wrote the voucher book, and thank you again. I mean, that is the one thing that is comprehending your court system, because like I said, there's 3 courts when you go into court. That's why a judge will go in and out of the courtroom, change his robe, basically is what they call, and it depends, and I can't remember what the 3 court systems are off the top of my head. I should have that memorized, but I apologize for that one. And I will have that set up, and I'll probably have it posted sometime tonight on the YouTube channel so people can go through that with the 3 court systems. But it's knowing one is equity, and I'm not getting... for some reason, they're not hitting me on the top of my head.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead, may I? You already got it. I know.
In law, equity, and admiralty maritime.
Thank you for the correction. Go ahead. Finish.
Well, that's it. That's your 3 jurisdictions. You have 3 jurisdictions.
So, and that is... Go ahead.
I missed what he said.
Oh, okay. You want to repeat that, may I?
Yeah. You have 3 jurisdictions. What jurisdiction is the court proceeding in? In law, equity, or admiralty maritime?
Okay, well, what I read was chancery, equity, criminal, and civil. So, because I was just trying to go through my notes because I jotted that down the other day. Which I
all you got to do is look. All you have to do is look at the Constitution. The Constitution tells you there's 3 jurisdictions: in law, equity, and admiralty maritime. What jurisdiction is this court proceeding in?
Right. Well,
and that's the one question you need to really ask when you go to these courts, or you always, before you even go to court, you want to put your argument in writing before you get there and put that in writing on what you're doing. Go ahead.
That's all for me.
Chief, go ahead. I wasn't deliberately interrupting. I do it all the time, but go ahead.
Well, no, what it was there's also the international one, which was started in 2012, Court of Last Resort. And that's basically out of New York because things have changed a little bit. So, and then that's the other one. If people are going to get into the Title 12, you probably also want to look up Title 9 and the sections of Title 9.
And Title 7.
Well, the reason Title 9 is because it's securities and how securities are made off bonds and whatnot. So, and really your birth certificate is a bond, but it's also an inheritance for you. A lot of people don't comprehend that. And what it is they set it up for you so that when you became of age, which was supposed to be 25 at the latest, that you could actually claim it. But of course, they don't teach that in your public school system. And that's part of it. You have to take time. I loved what you did, sir, on that vulture situation, especially finding that 1A in there. That was just awesome. I would have missed that. You really have to read some things a couple times over before you catch things. And it was one particular A that was placed in a certain spot that changed everything on the document. So, and there was a few other things that he pointed out. He's highlighted on there. I suggest if you get a chance, ask Ed for it. If, he doesn't have it, Ed can give you mine and we'll pass it back and forth. But I think people should read that. He did an absolute beautiful job on that. I was blown away. I read it 3 or 4 times. By the time I got to the 7th time, I was sitting here kind of cackling, because he really did a fantastic job. But that's part of it. He did the research. He took the time to do the research. And, it didn't come overnight. He had to write people, the Secretary of the State, the Attorney General, several people to find out certain things. And, bless him for that. I mean, seriously, give him his propers for that, because he really did a fantastic job. So, and we appreciate him coming in and talking. We really do. I would love to pick his brain sometime, because that's what you do when, it's like a chess game. You don't get better at the game until you play with people that are better than you. That's the bottom line here. You've got to get there and get to people that are knowledgeable, for knowledge that you may not have. So, that's just, that's my spin on it. You can roll, Ed.
Well, and also, too, the reason why I'm bringing up Title VII is civil rights. And remember, civil rights came in after the Civil War. We fought England again. And so it's like reading what civil rights really means on the circumstances of the court when you're walking in. Because civil rights, and when you read this, and we've got it up, and this is 17 U.S.C. 2000, separates the situation of your legal or lawful. And that is the point that I bring up. You have to know when you're going into court what your standing is. You have to, and that's the one thing I do, and all the time I talk to people. How many generations are you on this country? It doesn't matter. I was born here. Yes, it does matter. Why do you think that people are being shipped out? Why do you think Trump's doing it? Everybody's panicking on it. Because they're coming in and getting a birth certificate, and that birth certificate they're setting it up so that way it's an insurance account, a trust account for the man or woman or child, that's coming in illegally or even legally, and they shouldn't have this right coming in. They're supposed to be working. You're coming in to earn your right. You earn your freedom. You don't walk into somebody's house and say that I have a right to sit in your chair and you're going to give me a beer and you do what I tell you.
Well, have you seen the new status on when you're pulled in for any kind of crime? They're not just stating as, okay, your name. They're putting down whether or not you are basically a foreigner. As to if you're Latino or if you're English or if you're Australian. So they're separating everybody again. So that's kind of an interesting one, because I just saw some crime reports. I'll tell you who it was. It was Willow Moon posted it, a friend of yours.
Yes, I know.
And she posted it up there, and it actually said different things. I mean, it was pretty nasty to look at.
Well, nasty, but again, that's the point that they're getting it back, because, see, what Trump's moving back is to bring back their structure. Now, I got a lot of people that, you're wasting your time with Trump and stuff like that. I could give a shit about that. I care about what's going on my soil and then my country is more important. Not what somebody's emotions or feelings because they were wrongfully educated in the circumstances of life. And that's the problem that we're fighting all this time, because everybody thinks that they know more than what somebody else knows. I'm still learning. We're all still learning. There's nobody, it's like what it says, that I guess what some people say even in the Bible. Until you know everything, once you know everything, then you die. Well, and go ahead.
Well, and then that's the other one. You brought up the Bible. Come on, Christ died for what he believed in. How many of you really are willing to die for what you believe in, and what are you going to stand up like he did? Even carrying that cross, the man still stood as high as he could carrying that cross. And that cross was not supposed to be carried by one man.
And that was not a light deal.
And, it kills me to know that 3,000 people looked on while he was murdered. None of them stood up, outnumbered 10-1. And, where was their faith? And that's all I really got to, how
and that's what we're dealing with today, right now. You're looking at all these people going around the cities and the streets panicking and doing all this crazy stuff. Where's their faith? Where's their comprehension? And then why aren't these people, it's like, Now, supposedly one of the cops is being charged with murder. Why wasn't that the first thing to start being before the riots started happening? See, that's the thing that kills me. You know, the riots are going on, and this stuff could have been prevented. All this is preventable. But see, you got to realize your elected and public employees have to create jobs, so it's called job security. So rob and pillaging creates a job. You know, and that's why. Go ahead.
It also goes to the insurance because.
Well, yeah, because all crimes are insurance. All crimes are commercial. Every crime is commercial.
That's what the commerce comes from.
That's right. So, and that's how they're able to bill off the de facto note. You know, that's their insurance, and that comes under your insurance under, what was that site again? Oh, man, I figured you had that on top of your tongue. Hang on a second.
No, I'm brain farting right now.
Oh, shit, I hate when that happens. But see, I know how it works, too. I've done that more than once myself.
I'd have to use old man George's thing from what was that? The Outlaw Josie Wales. Old man time is creeping up on me.
Damn, I hate it when that has to be admitted. But see, this is the one thing that when you step out of this movie and, you know, putting more and more of this together, you know, and how this stuff done. And don't forget that, you know, what is that? I always have a problem saying this. Peonage. Peonage.
Peonage.
Yeah, peonage. And don't forget, when you're putting in your instruments, the other one that I've been doing that I noticed that we've been seeing a lot of changes on a few instruments that I've been really putting in here lately with some people, is putting in the clean hands document. You have to have clean hands. You're going into court with clean hands. They don't want to deal with you.
No, because they don't have clean hands.
That's right. They can't have clean hands because they're in a black robe. What do you think the black robe? That's death.
Yes, it's actually supposed to be. Yeah.
It even says in the Vatican administrative rules, the black robe is the dead man's cloth.
Well, and then how many people know that mortgage actually translated in Latin means death contract?
Yeah, that's true. Most people don't have a concept of that. You know, but until we read enough or we've been around each other enough to do this, you know, and that is the one thing, you know, it is bringing out these things and working it out. But see, we can bring this stuff to your table, but you have to read this stuff because we can sit there and walk this through. And like I said, I got people all the time that I need help and stuff like this, but I tell people until you start reading it, until you start talking to me and knowing that you know what you're talking about, I can't suggest things or be part of it because you're not saying what's going on, and you want somebody to wave some magic wand over you, and you're living in some Disneyland movie, and it doesn't work that way. You know? Oh, the other point I got to bring up to the general public, you're going to love this one. Recently, just came from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, because they closed the fishing down in Oregon again. But the only ones who can fish is non-residents.
So it's peonage, if you have to remember it. Peonage, a condition of servitude, prohibited by the 13th Amendment, compelling persons to perform labor in order to pay off a debt. Peonage is also prohibited by state, 18 U.S.C., C.A., Statute 1581, 42 U.S.C.A., Statute 1994.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have peonage. I thought I'd crack out the book tonight just in case you were talking so I could back you up on what you were talking about.
Oh, no problem. That's what we do anyways. We do that more than once. But also, too, I want to bring up, too, that, you know, I thought it was funny that, you know, for fishing and all this non-residents. That's why, you know, when they say, are you a resident or are you this or that? No, I'm native. You know, then that way it's not a conflict of interest because I'm native to the soil. I eat the soil. I mean, I'm off the soil. I was born on the soil. My family's been on this soil going back to the 1700s. So, but I'm talking about the GMEI utilities. And once you... Go ahead. Okay. So I want you guys to realize on the utilities, this is what the corporation is. This is your birth certificate. This is what's filed in your local bank. This is what's filed in the stock exchange. This is where your value comes from, your Social Security number. And see, Social Security numbers can only be issued to native people, cannot be issued to immigrants. But they've been issuing immigrants, and that's how they're borrowing money off of the Social Security right now, off employment structures, so they can be like in Portland. They've got massive buildings going up in Portland all over. I mean, I watched more buildings and more land lost in Portland in the last 15 years than they have lost in the last 60 years. You know, because they're doing this and they're going off of your strawman account to build all these corporation and buildings and these new apartment buildings. And like in my county, they were trying to do apartment buildings and stuff for Muslims and immigrants. And it's like, it's not our responsibility to house the immigrants. It's not our responsibility to feed these people. Our responsibility is to take care of our own people on this soil. Your neighbors that are born here and have been here for 5 or more generations. And realize it doesn't say 5 or more generations. That's why your 5G towers are up. 5-generation towers. You know, it's realizing what those 5G towers are really doing to you. And people don't get that one. And that is the one thing, is realizing what your civil rights are and what the 13th and 14th Amendment, remember the 14th Amendment was passed and ratified by a foreign corporation. After the Civil War, the foreign corporation of the British government, you know, became effective. And that's the point that you got to realize and accept how this system has been designed and worked around you. I mean, it's like, you know, with Maureen O'Connor, former Supreme Court Justice. I mean, I've got her paperwork that came out, and she just came out last year going against, and this is her own writing back in July 9, 2019, where she's been duped, and she's been a judge for all these years on the Supreme Court, and she realized that she worked for the Queen of England and the British government. And she wrote it. She brought it out, you know, with the lies of the corporation. And see, this is the point, that we're living in these lives of these corporations. And remember, a corporation is a corpse, a dead body. You know, it's like the story. We always heard that you can't kick a dead horse. You know, what's the point of kicking a dead horse? And don't forget, the bar stands for the British accreditation to the King and Queen of England, is what it means. Bar is a Barrister Administration Registration Act. And people don't get that. And I've argued with a lot of attorneys and judges over the years, and they know my feelings, and they've attacked me. But the point to me is knowing how to talk to these people, and then you want them to leave you alone. You know, when you go in the hornet's nest, you don't want to keep putting that stick in until everybody starts stinging you. You know, when you step on that hornet's nest, you want to leave before they swarm. Because when they swarm, you got too many people going against you. You know, and this, go ahead.
Person, in general usage, a human being, i.e. natural person. 3, by statute, term may include a firm, labor organizations, partnerships, associations, corporations, legal representatives, trustees in bankruptcy, or receivers. National Labor Relations Act, Statute 2, parentheses 1. Now, people, a state as the people of the state of New York, a nation in its collective and political capacity, the aggregated or mass of the individuals who constitute the state, in a more restricted sense and as generally used in the constitutional law, the entire body of those citizens, and that small c, of a state or nation who are invested with political power for political purposes. See also citizen person. And let me see here. What did I do with it? There it is. Oh, come on. Better on being able to grab this paperwork faster. But go ahead, talk for a little bit.
Go ahead. While you're catching on, go ahead. But like I said, it's stepping out of the movie and watching this production and putting these pieces together. Now, you know, not only me, Chief here, the other gentleman who wrote the Vulture's book, everybody spent a lot of time putting these pieces together, bringing this out, bringing this forward. You know, and that is the point, that That is, it's like, it's interesting. I'm reading a new thing that ODF&W put out a deal that says, don't kidnap the young wildlife. Excuse me, what do you mean? I mean, if you're hungry, you're hungry. You're not kidnapping anything. But they're trying to separate this structure and rewriting administrative rules so that way the state owns you. You have to ask permission. And, it's bad enough you got to ask permission to fart, and then they come out with the CARES Act, and you got to realize, I mean, the state of Oregon is getting $16 million from the CARES Act, for marine-related businesses, all right? This goes back to the commercial fishermen. How come the subsistence men and women who fish and hunt are not getting their food bought for them like we're supposed to because they took away their food resources, so that's by law what they're supposed to do, but they're giving it to the commercial industry and the banks. And see, this is the problem that we have, is that because of lack of knowledge and education, and people do this, and then you wonder why you're kidnapped and held for ransom. And then that's one thing I want to get into. I got two other points, and I'll turn the floor back. Hopefully you get found your thought there, Chief. But anyhow, Title 31, U.S.C. 3113. So the courts have been lying and have, forcing us under a gift tax or a credit through our Social Security numbers. So this is a tax code, and this is under the Tax Crime Manual 22, fictitious corporations. So when you get kidnapped and held for ransom, or you pay your water or electricity bill, or you're paying anything with banking or anything in a corporation structure, this follows under that because it's a fictitious corporation, and so they're making us liable for their debts, and this is under 18 U.S.C. 287, 286, 287, fictitious fundamental claims, whoever makes or present to any person or officer in a civil, military, naval services under the United States. Remember, United States means corporation, not we the people, or any department of an agency that claims upon against the United States, as well as claiming a false, fictitious, fraudulent claim shall be punished. So, I mean, they already have these laws in place, but people don't read this stuff. So when they come after you, it's learning how to do this. And it's like, the voucher book, and, please read that on the new.org tracker site, because it is up there. Please take the time to read this stuff, because when you go into court, you ask the question to the judge, what authority do you have? Are you a corporation member? Because remember, the most important thing people need to comprehend, the sheriff, the police officer, the clerk, like your county commissioner, they all work for the court system, the foreign court system. So knowing how to represent when you go in, they all have a conflict of interest. The judge has a conflict of interest. They all get paid by the same de facto note. So they get paid by the same structure. And this is out of Washington, D.C., Section 8 of the Municipality Code in Washington, D.C. All your cities, counties, and states follow under that. And so when you step out and you start realizing how these things affect you and your family, and it really is, because once you start putting these things together and you walk into these courtrooms, and see, the thing is, you don't want to be a combatant, you don't want to be belligerent, you want to be able to walk in the courtroom if you have to, and walk out. You don't want to be arrested, kidnapped, and held for ransom. I've been there when the judge says, you didn't sign the paperwork right away, I wanted you to. And so they kept on kidnapping me. And I go in, the sheriff will look at me, the deputy at the jail, and he goes, do you want to sign this paperwork yet? And I said, no. Open the gate. I've been through that. I went through that off and on for 2 months. So I've physically lived through a lot of this stuff myself. So I had to learn this stuff as I was being, one would say, punished for not complying to their administrative rules. And so money and financial ability, and financial management, and this is under Chapter 31 of public debt. And so this is the one thing when you read this stuff, and I'll be putting it up on the website tonight so you guys can pull this stuff up, copy it, make sure you have it, and always use this reference even in your courtroom, because when a judge or you get a ticket and they want you to pay a fine, ask them how you want to pay a fine. And then we got the structure with the Montgomery Wards where the guy paid off his entire, $387 debt. I think it was $387, something like that. I can't remember the number out in the court case. But see, when he went to court, he argued with a judge, and the judge had to admit the dollar bill was the same value as a coffee bean. And I have the court case. Go ahead.
Coffee Bean Jean, and the judge's name was Sheehan, 1982.
Thank you. But I mean, that's the point. And so the guy ended up paying in coffee beans, but they buried that case. They didn't want you to know, because and even though that they say your dollar, your money has the same legal tender, but what is tender?
That's a plank on a chip.
That's right. And see, that's the point of bringing these things and learning what it really means compared to what you think. And that's why, bringing up Title 31 under, the structure of money and finances. When you bring this stuff up, read it. You can always use that stuff in your court cases. Bring it up. You get a fine they want you to pay. How do you want to pay it? Then you come back over here to 31 U.S.C. 3113 and ask them under the finances. And then payment obligation, and that comes under Title 31 U.S.C. 3123. What is the obligation of payment? How do you pay? And see, that's the other point when you do that, because technically when you get your water, electricity bill, or even when you get a ticket, when they send you that, there's supposed to be it's called a statement. And technically, legally, you're supposed to autograph it and send it back in if you're native. And if you're legal, you're supposed to put a signature on it. So it's like I said, it really makes a big difference knowing what lawful and legal really is in this country, and knowing how words mean. Words mean what the words really mean, and look at the words and question the words. And that's the one thing you always answer when you go to court, or even with a cop that pulls you over. That's interrogating, because I don't answer questions. But if he's pushing you on this, ask him a question back. Make everything a question. Don't sit there and go, yes, sir, no, sir, or, I agree to this term. Because the minute you start agreeing to a term, that's how they can arrest you. And then you agree to a term, and then you go quote your law after the fact. You can't quote the law after the fact when you're in a holding cell in jail. You don't want to put yourself in that position. You want to show respect. You don't want to be belligerent. You want to talk to the public servant with respect, and, you want to drive off. And I've been there. I've argued with them myself. I've been pulled over at gunpoint. I've been assaulted, almost beaten to death. I've been, I spent 7 months running around the state where they had warrants and death warrants on me. Even from the governor's office. I've been there, done it. I've physically lived it. It's through my statements. I've got the stuff filed all over the internet. It's been filed in Congress. So it's knowing what the structure is in foreign relations. And this is the one thing, too, you got to go through this, and I'll be putting this up, so that way I don't want to get into all this because I want to pass it back in. But remember, on 22 U.S.C. 286, U.S. Code, it's unannulable title, okay? And then also, too, in foreign relations, and I love it, what they go, intercourse. We all know what intercourse is, and so this is what they're doing to you. So, I mean, it's stepping out and start putting these pieces together, and doing this stuff and standing up. And see, if we don't stand up together and we don't start putting this stuff together, I mean, the bankruptcy was a fraud. We even got the bankruptcy stuff that, I can't remember, it was 407 pages of how they did the bankruptcy and the fraud they did that. And I have that, and we put that up, and I believe that's up on new.org and trackers. But see, this is the one thing, is knowing how these things, and then emergency legislative with public debt limit, balanced budget. So, and then we just went through a reset. That's what the cities and counties, I mean, like I said, 3 months ago, the mayors of my town is telling me how they're resetting the budget, and most people don't comprehend what a reset is. And that's why, when it comes to that and your payment obligation, and that's under 31 U.S.C. 3123. And, like I said, we're asking people to read this stuff, because we get an obligation to tell you this stuff, but until you read it, some people don't get it until they read it. And sometimes you have to read it 3 or 4 times before the light goes off in your head. And believe me, we all been there. You're not the only one. Go ahead, Chief.
Corpus delicti, the body of a crime. The body, in parentheses, material substance upon which a crime has been committed, e.g., the corpse of a murdered man, the charred remains of a house burned down. In a derivative sense, the substance or foundation of a crime. The substantial fact that a crime has been committed. The corpus delicti of a crime is the body or substance of the crime, which ordinarily includes 2 elements, the act and the criminal agency of the act. You want me to go into
Yeah, go ahead, yeah. Let's say into what we were talking about earlier.
Corporation de facto, one existing under color of law and in pursuance of an effort made in good faith to organize a corporation under the statute. An association of men claiming to be a legally incorporated company and exercising the powers and functions of a corporation, but without actual lawful authority to do so. Its elements are a law or charter authorizing such a corporation and attempt in good faith to comply with law authorizing its incorporation, an unintentional omission of essential requirements of the law or charter, and exercise in good faith of corporate functions under the law or charter, a corporation which has been defectively formed but which is not subject to collateral attack. Corporation de jure, that which exists by reason of full compliance by incorporators with requirements of an existing law permitting organization of such corporation. Now, let's go into color of law.
Mm-hmm.
The appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right, misuse of power, possessed by virtue of state law and made possible only because wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state, is an action taken under color of law. See tort, constitutional tort. Acts under color of any law of a state include not only acts done by the state officials with the bounds or limits of their lawful authority, but also acts done without and beyond the bounds of their lawful authority. Gee, there's a little conflict of interest. That's not in there. Provided that, in the order for unlawful acts or an official to be done under color of any law, the unlawful acts must be done while such official is purporting or pretending to act in the performance of his official duties. That is to say, the unlawful act must consist in an abuse or misuse of power, which is possessed by the official only because he is an official, and the unlawful acts must be of such a nature or character and be committed under such circumstances that they would not have occurred but for the fact that the person committing them was an official then, and they're exercising his official powers outside the bounds of lawful authority. 32 U.S.C. You should be able to take this one away, Ed. Statute 1983.
Now, I want you to finish on that one because I'm getting ready to go into something else here.
Well, then you have color of office, color of title, color of this act. There's many things in here. You know, that's one of the things we also suggest, if you can. I believe you can get some of the Black's Law's dictionary situation. I know you can get Blackstone's, which is the original English, from over the big pond. I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And it was kind of funny because a couple of those were stolen and returned after the break-in, which is kind of funny. And whoever it was that was thumbing through it should have cleaned their thumbprints. Too bad they're smeared. But, you know, that's the other one. So commerce, the exchange of goods, products, or property of any kind, the buying, selling, and exchanging of articles, the transportation of persons and property by land, water, and air, intercourse by the way of trade and traffic between different peoples or states and the citizens or inhabitants thereof, including not only the purchase, sale, and exchange of commodities, but also the instrumentalities and agencies by which it is promoted, and the means and appliances by which it is carried on, and transportation of persons as well of goods both by land and sea. Also interchange of ideas, sentiments, etc. as between man and man. See also affecting commerce, Chamber of Commerce, interstate and foreign commerce, Interstate Commerce Act, Interstate Commerce Commission, Interstate Commerce. So, and then let's see, commerce among the states, transportation from one state to another, and also all component parts of such intercourse. See, interstate commerce. And that would be the end of commerce until we go into some other things.
Well, this is the one thing is like stepping out. Like I always preach to people, go, "What do you mean step out of the movie? Watch the production." Well, don't be involved in it. I mean, I've been involved in acting and movies and MTV videos and a lot of stuff in my life. I could have been. Go ahead.
You should have jumped in on the Commerce Clause, the provision of the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Statute 8, Clause 3, which gives Congress exclusive powers over interstate commerce. See, commerce. Cooley Doctrine, interstate commerce. Okay, go ahead, Ed.
So let me get back over here. But see, with the Bankruptcy Act, like I said, people don't realize the Bankruptcy Act was all a stage structure. Okay, because see, back then there wasn't no communications what we have today. So you're in a house and basically in a building, and if people don't like it, you shoot them or you bribe them. And if they don't want to take the bribe, they die. It's sort of what they're going on today. But they also, too, dealing with discharging of bankruptcy. 183, Part 7. Courts and procedures. Go ahead.
Bankruptcy Act, a federal law, 11 U.S.C. for the benefit and relief of creditors and their debtors in cases in which the latter are unable or unwilling to pay their debts. The act was essentially revised in 1978, effective October 1st, 1979. Straight bankruptcy is the nature of a liquidation proceeding and involves the collection and distribution to creditors of all the bankrupt's non-exempt property by the trustee in the manner provided by the Act. The debtor rehabilitation provisions of the Act, Chapters 11 and 13, differ, however, from straight bankruptcy in that the debtor looks to rehabilitation and reorganization rather than liquidation, and the creditor looks to future earnings of the bankrupt rather than property held by the bankrupt to satisfy their claims. See E.G. Wage Earners Plan, the Act of Bankruptcy and Bankruptcy Proceedings. Now, if you want bankruptcy proceedings, I can go into that one.
Yeah, we hit that one because then I got to pull this other one up right now. I'm working on. So go into that one, and then I want to bring in this other one on bankruptcy.
Okay, the taking of possessions by the trustee of the property of the bankrupt actually or constructively in his possession at time of filing of petition in bankruptcy. The distribution of the proceeds received from such property ratably, there we go, among bankrupts, creditors whose claims have been filed and allowed, and the discharge of bankrupt from liability for the unpaid balance of such claims. Bankruptcy in the sense of proceedings taken under the bankruptcy law, in either voluntary or involuntary. The former where the proceeding is initiated by the debtor's own petition to be adjudged at bankrupt and have the benefit of the law. The latter where he is forced into bankruptcy on the petition of a sufficient number of his creditors. See Bankruptcy Act Supra. So.
And then we want to get into public law. This is Public Law 7-1. Congress, this goes into all the structure, the debt structure. Now, this was put in place September 30th, 1950. This is federal property under this act. And remember, when it comes to an act, it's like actors. That's what an act means. You're acting it out. How is it going to be determined? So, and this goes under H.R. 5621. And so putting this structure together with the United States Code, and remember, United States Code, this is the structure of a foreign agent, but also, too, you're still working on a structure. That's the one thing I brought up earlier, I believe, that I want to be able to pay attention to what's going on with the the Fair Act of 1938, because this month is supposed to expire. So if they're going to re-up it, so that way we have rights, or are they going to shut down the Public Employees Union, or are we going to end up being going into a structure where we got to be that concerned for our own safety? So, I mean, and this goes through this, stepping out. So we all need to be concerned with that because we want 138 to be there, the 1938 Foreign Administration and Registration Act, because we want our elected and public employees, all our police officers, all of our public servants, including, most important, lobbyists, to register. And I have been what they call a lobbyist in the past. And it was interesting because I had the Democratic Party, and I'm talking the Democratic Party, went after me with tooth and nail because when I was doing lobbying, even on my own House and Senate bills, that I had that for putting back your subsistence hunting and fishing rights. in the state of Oregon back in the early 1990s or mid 1990s through the 2007 was the last bill I had on it. And remember, bills are a bill. It's like when you go into a restaurant, you order food, now you got a bill. A bill means you pay. So this is the point of realizing, do you pay or not pay? Do you have protection of your food resources or not? And this is the one thing that people do not really comprehend because, you know, everybody thinks I have to pay. Oh, my freedom, because if I don't pay. See, that's the one thing when people say, I'm free. And I said, no, you're not. You bought a driver's license. You got insurance. You got a subscription to the TV program. And remember, TV programming you. And so you're always paying out these things. And so are you paying out in de facto notes? You paying out in greenbacks? Or what kind of credit digit are you doing? It's like one of the structures, one of the things I was watching earlier, I can't remember what island it was, but their exchange of money was the size of different stones. And it had to be different stones of that one stone variety. And it was like, not diamonds, but it was stones that you could find on the beach. And don't forget, you know, a lot of the names used to change beads and that type of stuff. And shells was the main currency going back and forth. And that goes back until even 150 years ago. And so it's realizing what our circumstances are. And like I said, the public laws, I'll be putting some of these stuff up on the website. So this way, I'm on the YouTube channel tonight, so this way you go back and look at this stuff because it's all about proper education, and we have not been properly educated because they want to keep us dumbed down because the biggest point that people don't comprehend is in the late 70s and 80s, you know, you couldn't be having one kid smarter than the other because then that was offensive. In the 90s, they really kicked it off. So when you had one kid smarter than the other, you couldn't have the emotions of one kid being smarter than the other, so it took away competition. It took away so we were able to, you know, have respect for ourselves, that we were able to make our own stepping stones going up the hill, that we're making progress and improving it. Now, today, the kids have nothing. They don't have no progress or anything like that. Most of their education comes from a foreign identity or foreign corporation school. Because even your public schools are foreign corporation schools. When they put in the Department of Education in 1968, they destroyed the school system. Because back prior to that, before that, a ninth grade educated kid back in the 50s was a one-year college graduate now. And now today, a college graduate now is a ninth grade student. You know, so it's learning how these things have been reversed on us. And, you know, these guys are smart what they're doing. This ain't that these things are, you know, they're smart at what they're doing to this country by dumbing us down. You know, and we are been so dumbed down when it really comes down to the general public is dumbed down. What happens when people get off work today? First thing they do is they go home, they kick their shoes off, turn on the TV and start dinner. They cook the dinner, watch TV, and they go to sleep. They don't educate. They're programmed in the structure of what they call programming. You know, so they're already being doctrinized so deep in their own mind, soul, and, you know, corruption, and they don't think about anything.
You're forgetting some other ones.
Go ahead.
So the younger crowd doesn't always go home and watch TV. They want to plug in the Xbox and they want to play blow-em-up games or Grand Theft Auto, which shows violence. Okay, so to give you another part of the Bankruptcy Act, Bank Secrecy Act, Federal Act 1970, officially titled the Currency and Foreign Transaction Reporting Act, which requires banks and other financial institutions to report the internal information on each unusual cash transaction over $10,000. The Act also requires anyone who transports physically or through the mail $1,000 in cash into or out of the United States to file a report with the United States Customs Service. Its final provision requires United States taxpayers who have foreign bank accounts to file a report with the Treasury Department. The Act provides for both criminal and civil penalties for failure to comply fully with these reporting requirements. 31 U.S.C. Statute 1051 ETSBQ. And then you mentioned something about writer. So a lot of people
which writer? Are you talking?
Okay, so whenever you sign anything, where is it? It's usually at the bottom of the page, right?
Right.
That's known as an underwriter. Any person, banker, and syndicate that guarantees to furnish a definite sum of money by a definite date to a business or government in return for an issue of bonds or stock. And insurance, the one assuming a risk in return for the payment of a premium. The title frequently given to the agent who acts in behalf of the life insurance company and to the broker who is appointed by a life insurance company to represent it on behalf of the insured. That actually comes from your birth certificate, people, and your social security number. One who agrees, and that doesn't say that in there, but that's my own, that's our knowledge, because we've studied this stuff. One who agrees to purchase an entire security issue for a specific price, usually for resale to others. A person who has required securities from an insurer or controlled person pursuant to contract or exchange and intends to reoffer or resell said securities to the public. The term refers to any person who has purchased from an issuer with a view to or sells for an issuer in connection with the distribution of any security or participates or has a direct or indirect participation in any undertaking or participates or has a participation in the direct or indirect underwriting of any such undertaking. But such terms shall not include a person whose interest is limited to a commission from an underwriter or a dealer not in excess of the usual and customary distributors or sellers commission. Investment Company Act Statute 2, see underwrite. So, underwrite, to insure life or property, to agree to sell bonds. What is your birth certificate? Your birth certificate is a bond, just for a little information on the side, etc. To the public, or to furnish the necessary money for such securities, and to buy those which cannot be sold. An underwriting contract, aside from its use in insurance, is an agreement made before the corporate shares are brought before the public. That in the event of the public not taking all the shares of the number mentioned in the agreement, the underwriter will take the shares which the public do not take. Underwriting being a purchase together with a guarantee of sale of the bonds. So you see, and that's what's actually going on in your courtrooms. When they have you sign anything, they can transfer that signature other than what you signed to another piece of paper because they're not going to tell you. And that's where Ed was talking about clean hands. Your courts do not have clean hands. They are here to make bonds and securities. And the way we have figured it out is once they make a bond, they sell it. Well, that bond goes 10 times more to 100 times more. So you see, they're actually making money off of you until you really get your head wrapped around, until you actually claim yourself and get yourself out of it, which I'm pretty sure the man that wrote The Vultures also mentioned that a couple weeks back. Your UCC1 paperwork, UCC3, but there's also some things on that. Ed modified his. Whenever you do these paperworks, remember, you are the security. You actually own interest in all these companies out here. They are your companies. You actually are a holder in due course. And that's what the secured party creditor setup is. Okay, what you're saying is I'm a secured party creditor. I'm not on the debtor's side anymore. And that's what's happened. There's too much debt out here. That's why things are going crazy.
Well, that's why they're resetting everything right now, because they're doing that to write it off on the third book.
Yep.
You know, that's the one thing people don't realize. They have 3 sets of books. It's not just one. I mean, it's 3 sets of books. And once you comprehend, there's 3 sets of books that they run off, because you got the incoming, outgoing, and then the write-off. You know, they have to write off. That's why when you look at that, and you got the structure where I can write things off on my business. I can write things off on my taxes. So you're writing it off, and then they say, oh, that goes to the taxpayer. Technically, it does not go to the taxpayer. It goes to the British structure of what they did under the IRS code. And so under the IRS code, go ahead.
Well, technically, you are the tax collector. You see, that's where the 1099. That's where the 1099A form comes in, the B form, and the C. Then also your 1096. You also have your 1041. Okay, when you file a 1041 as opposed to a 1040, you get all of your money back. But you really have got to study this stuff. We aren't far enough into the point where we can actually walk you through it just yet. That's what we've been pretty much hammering out for the last couple of weeks. And, it's not something that happens overnight. It's like he says, we go down a rabbit hole, and there's probably about 12 different directions you got to go when it comes to reading this stuff, because it's not just one part. That's why we were stating that you've got to get into the Section 9, Section 7s, your articles. Your 12th is actually banking. 9 is your securities and bonds, and they actually overlay each other. So you've got to read a lot of the stuff to get yourself educated. Eventually what happens is you won't even really need the bank. You can actually become the bank. There's a very good book that's called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which, that's a little bit outdated. But if you read the preface, the front page and the back page, it's about a 9-year-old boy asking his dad about the bank. And his dad explains everything about the bank, but at the end of the story, make it short, the 9-year-old kid goes, well, it sounds like I should own the bank instead of actually put my money in the bank. So you see, and that's the other thing, when you do a non-bearing interest situation, that puts you in a different situation when it comes to a bearing interest. When you have the bearing interest, that's a license, like your automobile license, anything, okay? It puts them in control of you instead of you being in control. So. And
that's what they don't want you as control of them, because all of a sudden you're their master, not the slave. That's like credit cards. You're the slave again. Everybody, I've got a thing where they bring in the slaves, and everybody thinks that, the colored man was the first slave of this country. No, we had the foreigners coming into this country and made the Indians a slave. Then they brought the black man to this country.
Not just the black man, but Irish, not just black men, but Irish, Polish, English, Chinese, a whole bunch of different types, but the black man is the one that's been yelling the most.
Yeah, basically he's the poster child for all this. And that's the problem that we're living with this structure, because real facts and real history is not being taught, and that's the point of bringing this stuff out, is bringing this out to the forefront, so that way we know who we are. That's why when I suggest to people, and I get a lot of calls. I deal with a lot of people. I don't really, I sleep sometimes as an option in a sense. And trust me, I know that. I've fallen asleep many times over the years on many talk shows. Burning the candle at 3 ends. Not 2 ends, 3 ends. You burn it at the ends and in the middle. But anyhow, it's knowing how the circumstances of these things are coming together and putting the facts in place. And so what I say to people all the time, do you know your standing? Are you lawful or native? Are you a corporation citizen? Are you an immigrant? Are you elected and public servant? And that's the one thing. If you're a public servant, you don't have rights until you rescind the contract. But you're still entitled to rescind the contract and still able to collect your retirement. So you got to realize that they've got this through the administrative rules under UCC codes. And remember, statute codes and administrative rules, they've got to set up not only to protect you, but to protect themselves. But the point is, they're not going to educate that to anybody anymore. They took that out, and then they put in social studies, and that happened for half a decade. But when I went to school, we were taught the separation of what they call republic form of government, not Republican, what people like to say. There's no such thing as a Republican government. It's republic. Republican is a corporation structure, is what they try to do. I'm a Republican. It's a Republican form of government. So you're still using their corporation structure. Republic means that you have rights. And under a democracy means you have privileges under the leader and you are the slave. You don't have rights in a democracy. And I see where these people, like Donald Trump, will say under the democracy and the republic. Well, he's under the democracy. He's the president of the corporation of the democracy system. Plus, he does clarify the structure of republic. It's like when he said this even recently again. You have to file your paperwork. You have to be able to know the separation of your standing in democracy and republic. He came out and said that recently in the news media of what's going on. So it's like, pay attention. And I know a lot of people don't like Trump, and I don't care about politics when it comes down to it. I want to be free. But we have to know these things, and your children should be taught this stuff. I don't care if the child's 5 years old. They can pick it up. When they're 5 and all of a sudden you start looking at them, they're 12, and they're starting to go through this stuff, and they're whizzing through it, all of a sudden they're learning their rights, not privileges, standing up to themselves. And that's the one thing we want the kids to learn so they can stand up for themselves younger. I mean, when I was blessed when I had a family, I had, kids that I was educating them to know what the teachers knew. The teachers were upset because the kid knew more about the administrative rules of the teacher than the teachers knew about their own administrative rules. And that's what you want to be able to do, is educate these kids so they are smarter than you. And once they become smarter than you, then you know you got somebody who's going to take care of you. And then you pass that on to the next generation, because that's what our elders used to do, 50 plus years ago. When you got elder, your family took care of you, the kids took care of you. It's not like today we throw you in an old folks home and we let you go rot away and we come visit you when it's inconvenient or convenient for us. And that's the saddest part. We're actually physically living in this structure. And this goes back to England when the kids were 15 and 17. When a kid hit 14, 15, 16, they would throw him on the street. You're an adult now. Get out of here. And we're doing that to the kids today. And they're doing that to kids today that don't even have education. And then the worst thing is the kids that are raised up in the elected and public employee system and the foster care. They are not educated. They are so programmed. And most of those kids have been on so much drugs, that their mind is so fried. When they start feeding kids, especially Ritalin, fries the brain. People don't realize, if you watch a kid that has Ritalin for 10 years and then all of a sudden trying to talk to that kid, it is so amazing what these eternal drugs do. And they do this because they're making $1 billion a year industry off the pain and suffering of the children. And I mean pain and suffering. They're not taking care of them. They want to make pain and suffering makes money. And then also, too, I love it how they're trying to say the pandemic is going to wipe out Social Security. Social Security is not wiped out, folks. Your Democrats are trying to take your Social Security and put it in their accounts and leave the country. Social Security was originally written, and it goes back to the structure of, what was that, the pirate days. Because when a pirate lost a limb or an eye or something, they got an extra boot of the bounty. And so that was, or ducats, whatever you want to call it, however you want to play it. But see, they got an extra boost in their bounty on the circumstances. And so with that extra boost, that was part of the retirement, so they could have somebody hired to take care of them, to feed them, to, wash them, clothe them, whatever, depends on the injury. And see, Social Security was put in that position to protect us. That Social Security is not designed for immigrants. Social Security is not a worldwide structure. Social Security is not for the outside of the United States. But they've been doing that outside, and it's disgusting when, Cubans and all these foreigners are getting it in foreign countries when they don't have a right because they're not paying into our system by their own administrative rules called your birth certificate bond. And see, that's the point. It's already paid. It's prepaid. It's like your mail is prepaid by the Queen of England, and I've got the stamps. And, until recently, I was doing all my prepaid mailing. And all of a sudden, they started attacking me on that because of what's going on in the post office. So they don't know what's going on. So, and we want to keep the United States Post Office still intact because you want the post office to stay in place because that's your pay stations. And by law, they have to carry gold and silver, and not de facto notes. When they hand you a cashier's check, and knowing what the term of cashier's check means. We're so lost that we don't get it. And the coronavirus, this was planned and this was already structurally set up because I remember reading this shit back in 1999 in some of the bills. That's like, what was that, Senate Bill 449 in the state of Oregon was passed, and that was the way they were able to take your kids and bill out Social Security numbers because they bill Social Security under Title IV on the kids. And so they're billing Title IV for foreigners outside of the United States, incorporation and unincorporation, and that's the point. They're billing out and they're spending all this money, and people don't realize that, most of it's not money, it's credit, digit. We could go to, what do they call that? What is it? Biocoin, biochip. That's why they want to put a chip in you. And that's the one thing that people go, and then you got these people who are whole happy to get the chip in, and then they got, in the Midwest, you got some corporations, including Microsoft, is one of those that when you get hired, you have to have a chip put in you. You know, and you don't know if that chip has cyanide in that capsule or not. You don't know what the point is. You don't know what the electronic waves does to your brain and that stuff when you walk through that. I mean, it's bad enough that the chip in your credit card when you walk down the street by your smart meters and all that, they can tell you how much money you got in your pocket. They can tell you where you're at. You know, your cell phone, they can tell exactly where you're at. They could dial in on that cell phone 10 feet where you're standing and what your location is. And people don't realize, I mean, satellites, we got so many satellites, they can put that satellite and find out who you are. I mean, your chip in your credit card tracks you. So, and, you know, it's bad enough that we got that going on. You know, and that's the one thing. I want to see the money come back because you don't want a credit card. Now, the Democrats are trying to eliminate paper money 100%, that you get a chip placed in you to do that. And if you don't get a chip placed, you're not allowed to do business in commerce. And they're using that as an excuse by the congressional legislative calling commerce chip. And you got, I mean, Pelosi's been pushing this shit for 15 years.
That's what they were trying to do with the COVID-19.
Right.
And then
go ahead if you want to add to that if you want.
So the COVID-19, Italy actually did a lot of experiments. They went against the WHO, World Health Organization. They did their own experiments when we found out it was a bacterium. And now they figured out how to actually take care of it, believe it or not, aspirin. And antibiotics kills it. So that's the whole bottom line of that one. So they were using that to force you to a vaccine. And, you know, everybody's all like, oh, they can't make a chip that's small enough to fit in a vaccine needle. Well, you know, 20 years ago, I might agree to that. But I watched a movie one time called X versus Sever. Antonio Banderas and that cute little thing called Lucy Liu. And if you really watch that, instead of watching it for entertainment, they killed her child. They made a decision, and let's see, what goes on over in China and North Korea? You get to ask if you can have a child. Okay, well, she had a child, and they said, no, you couldn't do that, so they killed her. Okay, well, she went a little bit berserk, but that's kind of what she was doing. She's going against the establishment.
Well, exactly. And don't forget, in China, they just raised it that you could have two children for the first time in 80 years.
Yep.
You know, it was always one child, and if you hit a child or whatever, and they found out that, you were executed on the spot. There was no judge, jury, and trial. You were executed.
Yep.
See, and they're still doing that today in execution in foreign countries. And they're doing that right now because they use the police department to execute you, like what just happened to this guy. You know? I mean, they had him handcuffed, threw him in a car. I mean, if you saw before he got the knee on the back of his head, he was already handcuffed. He wasn't belligerent. He, fuck, I'm done. And so then they got, you know, whatever he did to make it so that way it looked like the guy was being aggressive, and it wasn't aggressive. Anybody who saw the video knows that. That's why I figured that cop should be, well, I mean, you know, I don't want to say publicly hung. I would like to see it, but, you know, he should be extremely punished for what he did. No forgiveness. You know, when they sit there, it's like when my brother-in-law, you know, Jay Smith, rest his soul, it was like when he got shot in the head. They buried his body in the back of their garage for a week in Portland, Oregon. And, you know, we weren't looking for him. You know, one day he's there, and all of a sudden he disappears, and, you know, and then we get a call at the middle of the night. You know, it was like, you know, 10 to 1 or 10 to midnight. I forgot what time. It was about that time. You know, and my former wife's mother, you know, tells me, they found Jay, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He's on me. Oh, no. We found his body. And I said, well, I'll give the phone to your, you know, hang on, I'll give the phone to your daughter. She goes, no, you're the man of the house. It's your responsibility to deal with it, not mine. You know, she's got a point there. Okay, but I mean, this kid at 14 years old lost his life, and this is how Measure 11 and your goddamn bullshit came in place with your court system, who took away grand juries. Because we should have went to a grand jury and let the parents decide the punishment, if there was a punishment, because they said it was an accident. They were trying to play it off as an accident, but nobody knew the truth. So we needed a grand jury to decide, and a grand jury is supposed to be the parents deciding the punishment if they want to forgive or not, and his sister and the other relatives. We've lost the structure of what goes on. And remember, the grand jury goes back to tribal structure of the natives. Because when something happened, everybody got together. They put up the elders would get together and decide. And we've lost that reality, because we're going by this administration of a foreign court system from a foreign government, from a terrorist, from bullshit that comes from foreign countries. See, once you allowed immigration coming into this country, look at the confusion. Look at what we got on the street right now. That's your immigration acting out right there. Those are people from foreign countries acting out. Oh, we're panicking. If they didn't have that and we didn't have this problem, we wouldn't have the riots going on right now. But see, you got to remember, they have to have riots because all crimes are commercial. So the only way to build commercial comes back to your straw man account or your birth certificate, any way you want to call it. This is how they're billing it. And so they're doing this to keep the jobs going. It's the same thing when you go to jail. Everybody keeps going, well, how do they pay the jail? Off of your birth certificate account. It's comprehending how these things work compared to what you're, bluntly lied to or confused about or misunderstanding. And that's what we're doing right now is we're trying to get this information out to educate all of us, because me and Chief and, the other gentlemen, we learn stuff all the time. So we're bringing it up to the table. And a lot of our guests are bringing it to the table. They learn stuff, and this is the whole point of bringing it to the table so we can work together. Because if we don't sit there and bat the stuff out, because, we knew, there's a lot of stuff I knew 20 years ago, but now I have the evidence to put the pieces together, and now I can start setting up to walk through the life. But see, if that was brought up 20 years ago, shit, I would be in a different playing field right now. But that didn't happen at that point, so I'm in this playing field. So it all comes down to the circumstances of what our responsibility is. And also, too, when it comes down to it, your personal liability. Because remember, we are technically... Go ahead.
So you've forgotten the fact that it's lease, agreement, contracts, documents, and covenant. Covenant from the Bible is actually a contract. And if you actually do the research, which we have found out that they're trying to make it so there's a 90% capacity in these privatized jailhouses and prisons, because that's the contract they have with England.
Mm-hmm. Well, then you got... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, the other one is that we actually found from a Texas judge who admitted on record that he does not work for this country.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can find that in Phil Hudock at hudock.info. You can find other things. There's many websites out here. We try to gather stuff from other websites and post it on Ed so that we have a complete comprehension of what's going on out here so that we can pass the information on. And yes, it takes a little time to read that stuff on the website, but you got to comprehend. It's a part of figuring out all the angles they're trying to come from. And, that's how they get you. The minute you sign something, that's where the underwriter comes, because where do you normally sign? Usually at the bottom of the page. And then the other one is back in the day, going to the stamp situation. Back in the day, to give the money value, people used to actually take stamps and put it on the money to turn it into the banking systems. So it had value and it had the gold backing it, because the post office still is backed by gold and silver. And that's the bottom line. Even when you do a document, you should actually put a stamp on it to give it value. Okay.
And autograph it.
Yep. When you don't, and then they'll want you to do a thumbprint. It doesn't matter if it's a right thumbprint or left. Depends on what hand you use to do your autograph with. We found some other information on you. There's supposed to be a way to use your index fingers also.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to, I believe, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And then, of course, that leads to, if you read in your Bible, 2 witnesses. Okay, if you don't have a facial situation, you can get 2 witnesses. Now, Ed did his paperwork. He had 4 witnesses. When this was recently asked by some of the people we were studying, they said, the more the merrier. because you never know. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not promised. If one of them passes away, it's going to be hard to bring that individual into a courtroom.
That's right.
So the more witnesses you have, the better off you are.
May I?
Yes, go ahead,
please.
May.
Yeah, and you want to use lawful money stamps because now you're in original Article 1, Section 10 money, and it's the like the red fox stamp. I always find it interesting that was one of them that they turned to, but there's many others that's got the lawful money sign on it. It's not just a one bar running up and down with an S on it. It's two bars with the S on it.
Thank
So
you,
that's the lawful money stamp.
Yes, because the original single one is actually the serpent wrapped around the staff.
That's but it's still a counterfeit. That was all I had to say. Yeah, go ahead.
You're right about that. That's what I was going with. The snake around the staff. And if you look at that, then you have the twin snakes around the staff when it comes to the medical situation.
Yes, exactly.
And if and that really does lead back to your Bible. When Ed gets a little bit on the God stuff, comprehend it that natives think a little bit differently, and the Bible really is about life. It really is about life, and there's a lot of good things in there, and it really does pertain to situations. I mean, in Matthew, you look in there and you can read it. It says right there, try to make friends with that police officer. And that's what Ed was, brinking on earlier. Back in the day, you're supposed to be able to be friends with that officer, and that officer should have been able to decipher for himself as to whether or not, he really needed to follow through, or if this was just kind of a mistake situation, and he could forgive thy brother, forgive thy sister, and then that's the other one. A lot of women don't comprehend that in the book of Ruth, it states that if you don't have a husband or a father to represent you in a court of law, you don't really have to be in that courtroom. You see, and that's the thing. We have to remember who we are. He made us from the soil. That's why and we've been researching this. One of the things we found is spiritual soul of the soil is not in any law book. Okay, and that's the other one. The law books are really based upon the Bible, and that's what you got to get your head wrapped around. They're charging you as you're a sinner. Okay, you have to come in, like you said, with clean hands. We know they aren't using clean hands. How many times have we been in a courtroom and the attorney starts saying something that wasn't even anything you went through? Okay, number one, they're not under oath. Number two, I've experienced it. They call me a sovereign citizen. Okay. Where's the evidence? Now, if you're going to use a third-party interlooping set of evidence, which we actually have a piece of paper that comes directly from the FBI that states all of this stuff that I'm talking about, which I'll try to get a picture of that and send it to you, Ed. I know you asked me about it for a couple of weeks ago, and it totally slipped my mind until you just said something.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing. There she is bearing false witness, lying. Okay? And they're stealing from you, but they're not going to tell you this stuff. And then, and in reality, any contract, any lease agreement, contract, document, covenant has got to be done in good faith. They're not using good faith and clean hands. They're going to distract you. Go ahead.
May I?
Yes, sir.
Which Bible do you recommend?
Well, you see, now that's the difference. I've gotten into different ones. I went past the King James Version, and I got into the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jasher, and then that led me to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that led me to the actual original Hebrew Bible.
What about the
Hebrew
Bible?
Well, the Hebrew Bible is a little bit difficult because
Geneva.
What's that?
Geneva.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that one. But you see, I also got a little mixed up at the Mason's Bible. I tried to get as much education as I could.
Right.
And that's how I kind of got into the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, because it actually shows you the progression of religion. And, we, like I said, we don't put anybody down. If you respect me and I respect you, that's really what it's about. We're really supposed to be here to help each other. That's what we really got to comprehend here. I don't care what your skin tone is. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your background is. If you come to me and, the easiest way to describe this is music, okay? Music also has a lot to do with life. My favorite, excuse me, is Wooden Ships by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, because in the very first line, if you smile at me, I will understand, because that's something everybody does in the same language, okay? And what was our first language? We couldn't speak. We had to sign. That leads back to the natives. That leads back to the early tribes. There's a tribe out there that when they talk, they pop. They literally like snap their tongues and whatnot. I'd love to know how they do that, because that's just impossible for me to even think or comprehend.
Yeah.
But you see, that's just it. The King James Version is the most widely version that, is out there. But, it's kind of been manipulated a little bit, because translations across languages, it's just like going from English to Spanish. Okay, Spanish is mainly a backwards kind of language. They'll put like the cart behind, in front of the horse. But it's
almost like Pig Latin.
Well, yeah, but you comprehend what I'm saying. I mean,
I know.
It's when you translate to a different language, you have to be very careful, and they're actually going back through the Hebrew Bible right now and bringing it forth. So I'm praying that we actually get, the actual stuff in it. But you see, the Jewish think of us as goyim. They think of us as pigs. They think that we're not worthy of God's love or the Creator's love.
Mm-hmm.
And, why would He create us then? You see, and that's what I'm saying. Also in the Bible, it's...
May I?
Go ahead, may I?
Go ahead.
It seemed to me like we were formed. In Genesis 2, it says He formed Adam, not created. Adam was formed.
See, that's just it. It leads back to the soil. Now let's think about that, okay? If we are God's seed, and look at everything out here that grows, it comes from a seed. So I really resonate with what you say there. I comprehend that fully, and I'm right there with you. And the ironic thing is that's how they kind of got us, okay? Because and this is going to be a little bit messed up for you all to probably comprehend, but from my studies, okay, so the only seed that grows in salt water is ourselves, because our bodies are basically a 78 to 80% salt water. Okay, so that's the only thing, and that's how they got us on the birth and came to be vessels. And that's how they treat you in these courtrooms. That's where the Admiralty Maritime Law comes in. Okay, because they're treating you like a ship. Okay, Look at it. Township, relationship. Everything seems to have a ship in it. You know where I'm going with that? So what gets me is people don't comprehend. When you were born, you were baptized in the blood from your mother. So this baptismal by water is really, they're trying to get you back into the water. Okay? Mm-hmm. We were baptized by the blood to begin with. Okay? And like you said, He did create us. And everything you read, it does say He created us from the soil. Well, what's again, how do you get anything to grow? Seeds cannot grow without a soil. And I've often asked this question. This has really messed some of these judges up and some of these attorneys. Nature and cause always freaks them out a little bit when you ask that. Okay, but the one that really got them recently, and pretty much I felt like E.F. Hutton because everybody shut up in the courtroom. I said, well, what seed grows in salt water? And I didn't get an answer. Because really no seed other than maybe seaweed and what grows in the water, but then you've got to take the biological effect of that.
Yeah, but don't forget that's a fungus or fungi that's growing in the water.
Exactly. You see, that's the idea. Okay, we're not fungus. Okay, we were created. He got us, he gave us from the earth, and then He breathed life into us. Okay, so if that be, and I'm going to roll with it, because, the Creator is capable of anything. Walk outside your door tomorrow. Look at the grass. Look at the trees around you. Look at the birds, the bees, everything. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a full circle of life. Mm-hmm. And in reality, if you look at the infinity is a circle that's been twisted, because every situation has a crossroad. We all have a crossroad to each other. We go around and, they say, well, it came full circle. Well, you didn't come full circle all the way around. You didn't just go in a circle on the outway. Okay, there's always two paths to travel. And that's really what the infinity, design is. It's really like a number 8 stretched out. We always meet people in our crossroads of life, and look at the wonderful people that are on the show, the wonderful people that are coming to us right now, because they want to be educated. They want to know how the system is, and it's not really bad. It just got corrupted. We can change it back to being good. We really can. A lot of people, if you really read your Bible, okay, there was a one world order under God, but we didn't need money. The only people we needed the gold and silver for were for the people that were mentally or physically incapable of handling themselves. But you see, even them, what's his name, Hawkins, even though he went down, he still had his mind. He still could think, and that's what we really have to do. We have to think, and I think back in the day, before everything got corrupted, if you truly read your Bible there, okay, it stated that if one person, we had a circle outside, and the person that needed to be healed was in the middle, as long as we all believed, the person in the middle got healed, okay? And we need to kind of get back to that. Of course, now that ruins the insurance companies and the doctors and everything else. I'm not trying to take away from them. I'm not. But when you're charging, seriously, how many have gotten that bill and they charge you $15 to $16 for a damn aspirin? Come on. Did you have to go rob the bank to get the damn bottle of aspirin, buddy? Seriously.
Now, I can't comment to that because that's the one thing that I try to explain to people under your Social Security and stuff like that. They already got your Social Security number at the hospital, all right? So it's already prepaid. So when they want to put you in a deal, I can't sit there and sign anything under duress. So you're trying to get me to agree to a contract that you're already prepaid under. They're already using your birth certificate under the corporation interest bonds. Remember, your Social Security, your birth certificate on this country is an insurance bond.
The other one is the
Go ahead.
The other one is, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the Social Security card is actually like a credit card when you finally figure out the system. Okay, that's so that they know that the money is not real. Okay, they know it's based on debt. What we've got to do is dismiss the debt and get it back to a allodial situation. Allodial means lawful. Okay, and that's where we've to get it back to. There's too much debt on the books. That's why they're trying to do a reset. Okay, but once again, that debt's still going to be carried over somewhere. It's still got to be relieved somehow. Okay, well, let's figure out how to help the system and help our elected officials that are supposed to serve us. We've got to show them that we can handle
Wait a minute, I got to interrupt you. That are supposed to know this stuff instead of raping and robbing and pillaging.
Well, look at what they're taught. Okay, look at what they're taught. If you go into, I might be incorrect. Okay, and I'm going to go out here. I'm going to go out here because this is the way a politicianal situation is. Okay, I could be lying to you. I could not be lying to you. I might be telling you the truth. I might be telling you an untruth. Okay, but here's the thing. If you walk around with people that go by the system of greed, oh, well, this is how you get your money. This is how you tap into them. This is how you abuse them. This is how you put them into slavery. Okay, as opposed to, let's go in the other direction. This is the way you relieve things. This is how you handle your business. This is how you are a private individual and you are self-governed. Okay? If you read the structure, God created man. Man created government. Government created corporations. Okay, we are not a corporation. We just read that. It said men. Men is plural. Man is singular. This is where the words come in. It's just like I was discussing with Ed earlier today when my cousin was up here helping me out. Okay, trader, Trader, or traitor, Traitor. And you see, that's what they've gotten into the habit of. They're traders, but they're actually going under the Traitor version. But they're saying, we have the right to be traders, Traders, because we're not handling our affairs. But how can we handle our affairs if we haven't been taught the proper way?
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's what makes me mad. You want to come in and you want to program all the children from birth to death so, you can rape them, pillage, and take from them. This is not the design that the Creator made. Take a look at your Indians. Take a look at your Amish. They didn't try to steal from each other. They were always trying to help each other. That's why the Amish call us English. Why? Because we go by the English rules. And now look at what they're trying to do to them. They're trying to tear apart their structure. Oh, well, you can't homeschool children. Well,
wait a minute. You can't do self-medication either. You have to go through the Western medicine.
Well, and that's the funny part. We'll take a look at it. I think the Creator kind of put a dent in that one because we all sitting at home.
Well, see, the other point I got to bring up too. I mean, I'm not totally against modern medicine to a degree because, like I said, I spent 7 months in ICU or 7.5 months in ICU. I've been hooked up on life support. I died 13 times, lung and heart failure, complete shutdowns, and I'm still here.
Well,
so you talk about craziness, all right, And I remember the one time when they pulled the blanket over my head and I sat up, and everybody's like, "Oh, it ain't my time yet."
But you see, that also leads back to like the COVID-19. They found out it's a bacterium, and here these people are wearing masks, and it's a proven fact that when you wear a mask, it causes carbon dioxide in the body.
Carbon poisoning.
Yep, and it actually attaches to the outside of the lung. I posted
not
that
only
on my
that,
Facebook.
I went through several times where when they did my deal, when I had my heart attacks, they told me that not only was I low on carbon, but I had a couple carbon, my body shut down on carbon a couple times, and without carbon, you don't live.
Right. See, that's why it's so funny when they say, well, we want you to shut down your carbon footprint upon Mother Earth. What? It's not us that needs to shut that down, it's them.
Well, not only that, you got to remember your carbon footprints as your trees, your grass, your butterflies. Hello, they're telling you to kill your planet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the sad part. I mean, take a look. I mean, I'll give you a prime example, the EV1, the electric car. Okay, what was that going to destroy? Well, you don't have a motor anymore. You don't need really oil other than the bearings and whatnot.
Right. Well, don't forget, Ford had a car in 1911 that ran from New York to San Francisco and back. It was electric, and it ran by generators that kept it going.
Yep, and that's the idea is that, we have the technology, but whenever anybody comes up with technology, what happens is the government comes in and wants to regulate that. There's a guy out of Canada that actually took, believe it or not, Kevlar, and figured out that if you heat it up, you can mold it. And once you mold it, it can never be unmolded. Even if you heat it back up, you have to literally burn it in order to try to do that. And even then, it doesn't want to catch on fire. And then, he lightened the body up by literally almost 60-some-odd%. I mean, it was 1/3 the normal weight of a car. And he put a small little 4-cylinder engine in it. When he put a turbo in it, I mean, seriously, the normal gas aspirated engine he used, which he wanted to modify to an electric gas situation, but he didn't have the availability. So he used the small 4-cylinder gas engine. He was getting 80 miles to the gallon. 80 miles to the gallon. 10 gallons gets you 800 miles.
That's what I did. I had a Toyota B210, all right? And I knew, I was a mechanic, so I adjusted the carburetor in it. So I was getting 45 to 57 miles per gallon out of it. And that's the one thing you could do. You reverse your vacuum lines and adjust your carburetor, stream it. And people don't get how that works because you're using the vacuum lines to put back the burnt gas back through the carburetor.
Well, the other one is there's a guy out there that has the technology, and sadly he created a hydrogen torch.
Oh, yeah.
When you put it across your hands, does not burn. But when you put it on metal, it cut through it like melted butter. And then he also created a generator that ran off of magnets. What happens? They lock them up for 14 years. Because they're not going to make a profit. They don't see the profit in it. And that's the sad part. They're so involved with having their money tied up in this and that and the other thing. And they've made promises.
No. Remember, it's not money because There's no value on what they're doing.
Well, the man that always says, may I actually confirm that. It's actually counterfeit. Everything out here is really a counterfeit. So, that's where the Coinage Act, if you really read it properly, which we did a little bit, that's what it really says. And the sad part is metal has always been worth more. That's the sad part. And most people don't know it. There's like 600 tons of gold sitting like in the Philippines right now and across this continent that, really needs to go back to the people. It was taken
not
from
only
the
that,
people.
the Twin Towers went down to get rid of the 800 tons of gold they had on the basement there, and that was the one thing. I mean, come on. The Twin Towers Building 7 falls down, and they say because the other two buildings fell, and the earth rumbled, so the Building 7 went down. I mean, it just amazes me how stupid people are to believe something like that. And what gets to me is where is the fuselage of the plane that hit the Twin Towers, like the fuselage that hit the Pentagon building? Okay.
You haven't seen the latest? You haven't
seen
the
well, I've got
video?
too, but you sent me, but also too, I had the videotape sent to me from somebody in the military 30 hours after it hit. And not only that, I used to have the videotape where Judge Scalia was assassinated and that stuff. So. Okay,
well, now I'm going to mess with your mind a little bit because I really like the gentleman that wrote the Vultures book, so I thought I'd give him a little notation here. Okay, so if you actually do the parallel between the Tower of Babylon and the Twin Towers, okay, so the church that was kind of affected by the fallout. If you look at that church, that was the original church that Washington and all them were making their decisions because Washington had not been built yet. So D.C. was not complete. So they were actually making their decisions up in New York at that church. That church, a piece of it fell down on the tree. Look at the tree and what it was, and then look at the tree that was destroyed at the Church of Babylon. And then look what tree was replaced at both Babylon and that New York church. And that's really going to twist your head a little bit up because they are completely paralleled. And what did Christ talk in? Parables. Why? Because words really have a double meaning. You just mentioned traitors and traitors. You see, that's just it. And they're going to twist you up. If you walk into a courtroom, you've already lost. Okay? You really want to do your paperwork before you get in the courtroom. That's just...
You don't want to go to court. You want it dismissed before you go to court.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you got a claim, you want the claim paid before you go to court because they don't want a real claim on recorded record.
Well, and the other one is, like I said, I can't praise that man enough right now that's on the line with us because the beginning page he did on the judges was just an absolute golden rod of justice. That was just an absolute golden rod of justice. I read that. I got a good chuckle at it. I had to read it a couple more times. I mean, that was just beautiful. There's no other way to describe it. That was like a coup de grace before any of the other paperwork was actually even printed up. He had them right by the short hairs right there. And I'm going to leave it at that.
But yeah, like I said, we've covered a lot tonight. Anybody else would like to add anything tonight?
Come on, speak up now. We ain't afraid.
Why are you afraid? We're not. We've already been battered and bruised. So, if nobody else has got anything to go, I think we might as well call tonight and get some more for next week. But that's the whole point here, folks, is stepping out of the metrics, learning the mechanisms. It's like when you build a motor. You get to learn how the crank works. And then you learn how... Go ahead.
Take a look at that word matrix. Matrix. They may pull tricks on you. Get it?
Yeah, I knew a girl called Trixie.
Silly rabbit.
I know. I'm sorry. I just had to go that route. I don't know why it just came out, but... So, but I mean, this is the point that when you start putting these things together, because remember, it's like they always say, the victor rewrites the history of who won. And so who's the victor in this one? And so this is where we're at right now. We're at a turning point in our history, in our country right now. I mean, we got all these people freaking out, and you're realizing that most of the people that are freaking out because they lost their jobs, they lost their homes, and the government's looking at, and then they got their little neon soldiers out there shooting people and killing people for their jobs. They got their executioners out. And if anybody knows, if you ever listen to the song, The Saints Come Marching Home, learn what that really means, because when the Pope got pissed off, he sent the saints out to kill the people, because when King John put up his blade, he said, we ain't fighting and killing in the name of God anymore. There is no God, so we're not going to kill in the name of God. So when the saints get marching home and the Pope sent the saints out, that's when King John picked up his blade, started beheading every Pope and everybody in religion he saw. That's how you ended up with your Magna Carta in England, not American. And so when they bring that into your courtroom, that proves that when you go in your courtroom and you bring the Magna Carta in there, you're dealing with a foreign court.
Yeah, but you're forgetting the Knights.
Go ahead.
You're forgetting the Knights Templars, which was the true justice back in those days.
No, I wasn't forgetting them, but you got that one right. That's what went after the, yeah.
So, that's just it. The other thing is, and I think, the gentleman will agree with me that's always chimed in here. These children don't have a structure. They just don't have a structure. They were let to go wild instead of having some kind of construction of what rules and regulations are. And, I don't down the Bible in a perspective of that situation, because it does have a commonplace of rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just it. We're the other one is we can be absolved of our sins, but we have to work towards the redemption. And that's where our country, this entire world is at right now. It needs a redemption reset.
Mm-hmm.
It really needs people to read things. The Bible can get you into law, in a different way. It starts you out and it gives you numbers in there. I mean, and all laws have codes, numbers. Okay, so, and that's just it. Even the Bible has a section called numbers, and that's the idea. And then if you look in the back, and, that's one thing. You look in the back, it also explains about money and what money was, how it was gold and silver back in the days, or bronze, and I think that if you read that, I know people get a little bit weirded out, some don't want to, but, it really does kind of give you an introduction to life. And then you can branch out, because that's where the laws branched out from. There was 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are laws. They really are. Don't go messing with somebody else's wife. Don't covet thy neighbor's wife. Don't damage that neighbor. Okay, but then again, you're not supposed to carry your neighbor either if he's just going to be, a lazy person.
Right, right. Unless he's really physically or mentally disabled.
Right. And
separating that. That's what Social Security and Disability was put in place, because when we think about it, well, I mean, I got injured on the job. So that was supposed to cover me because of my slavery structure, and that's what it comes down to. They had to put something in place to protect us when we got disabled from working for the corporation. That goes back to the structure what the pirates used to do, when you got a little extra of the booty for the injured party that lost an eye or a limb. And don't forget, the pirates came from, where did they start from? England, because after the wars, the English sailors had nothing to do after that point, because all they knew was rape, rob, and kill. So, and that's what some of our police department is doing right now. It's the same thing. That's why we've got some stuff up with pirates on the church stuff, and, police cars, and people are doing more and more of that stuff, putting those things up and making more stickers, with the pirate signs on these things. I mean, it is putting this piece together and start to comprehend how it works. So, anyhow, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, it's all good.
so
It's all good.
anybody else would like to chime in? Okay. Well, with that, then why don't we just call it an evening? We would like to thank everybody for joining us, and that's the whole point. It's about educating. We do the research, you do the research, bring it to the table. I still got other people that email me stuff that have joined the group and stuff like that on Facebook and emails. And so we got a lot of people out there who don't like to have their structure be publicized or to be out there, and I comprehend the concern that they have. You know, I mean, I've always been that's one thing that people don't realize. You know, everybody calls me a bull in a china shop, but have you ever seen a bull in a china shop? Do they knock anything over? And remember, not only that, who was that? Mythbusters did a hell of a deal on bull in china shop in their program. You always type in Mythbusters bull in a china shop and see what happens. People don't realize that people do pay, animals pay attention to their surroundings. And don't forget, we are an animal. We're no different than any other animal. Just because we have a brain that we think, but look what our brain has done to our people. We let greed take over. The minute you saw that, shiny metal, the greed took over your life. And we watched it. And so that's the whole point of doing this stuff. So we get it back to lawful structure. We shouldn't be fighting right now when they're in the streets fighting, because right now all these kids are fighting. Where do they get all this attention? How do they know how to do this? Video games. Death marker. What is that major one that they do, blowing up buildings and stuff, that came out about 15 years ago? Then you got combatant. Go ahead.
Call of Duty.
That's the other one I was going to bring up too, the Call of Duty. I know a lot of kids that I knew growing up 30 years ago, 25 years ago, that was a major game. And they tried to get me into all that, And Call of Duty, what is that? The Germans and Americans shooting each other up. And then you have the other Chinese game. I can't remember what the hell that Chinese game was. It was really good in martial arts. But, that's the... Go ahead.
It was called Tekken.
Yep. So, but they put all this stuff out, so we've already been conditioned, and these people that are reacting the way they're reacting, they've already been conditioned to do it. It's already programming, mental programming. How many times have you blown up and got angry over stuff, and then you realize afterwards, you go, why the hell did I do that?
Well, you see, that's the sad part. Martial arts is actually supposed to be a spiritual adventure. It's supposed to be mind, body, and soul. And there's a lot of, look at Gandhi, Mother Teresa, it's supposed to be mind, body, and soul. And that's part of it. And tell me, somebody please point out that these greedy people that are in positions that think they are leaders are not following those seven deadly sins.
Mm-hmm.
This is something my cousin, she and I talk about a lot, because, we've seen it. Right away, like I said, in the courtrooms, you've got them lying, bearing false witness, and pretty much robbing the people. So theft.
Well, and then the other point you got to remember, the natives was the same way until we had the foreigners come into our country. We were all peaceful. Then we tried to be peaceful, and then everybody keeps going. I love how they lie about Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving, it was the first stuff the Pilgrims slaughtered the Indians down. We got this big gathering. We got them all here. We could kill them now. They don't tell real truth in history, do they? That's the point. Columbus never came here. Go ahead.
No, that's the point. It's sleight of hand. That's what magician. The original magician spelling was magi. Dan Black says that a lot, the actor. M-A-G-I. Magician. And that's really what a magistrate and the courts are doing there. They're kind of pulling the wool over your eyes.
Magician is, and Penn and Teller will explain that to you.
Well, and then if you look at...
He's a magician, huh?
You say that again?
Yeah.
The I never thought of that before. The magistrate's a magician.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Magi straight. Okay?
Yeah.
Think about it. Okay? they're straight up pulling a magician's trick on you. You know how many times? Well, let's take a look at an arrest situation.
Well,
Okay,
go ahead and finish up, guy. Finish your thought on that one. I think that's Scott, isn't it? Finish your thought on that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I hadn't thought of that. Last time I was in front of a magistrate, I had been down to the Secretary of State, and I did get a copy of his oath, but he had an oath as a DA, but not as a magistrate.
well, you see, that's the idea. The bar is actually a constructed magician's game. That would lead back to what is it? Now you see me, now you don't. The magicians, the four horsemen. Okay, so in reality, there's a lot going on there too. And once again, what happened in that movie? They made the money disappear. You see what I'm saying? They tricked you. Okay, and that's really what's going on. They're tricking you. The other one is like, you get pulled over and they say they have probable cause. Absolutely not. The actual design is you're supposed to have a grand jury indictment or a warrant before you.
Not only that, a cop cannot act as a grand jury. He cannot act as a prosecutor. He cannot act as a lawyer or an attorney, and that's what he's doing when he pulls you over.
Well, the original, the other one is, believe it or not.
Wait a minute. Let the other guy finish his statement. Hang on. Go ahead.
That's all. No. Go ahead. I'll come back.
So
finish your statement, and we'll come back. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, well, I was just thinking when I'm trying to craft a counterclaim, and somewhere in there, the cop arrested me without a warrant. He jailed me without a trial, and I mean, what are they going to do? Deny that?
Yeah, but you have to put it in charges: kidnapping, held for ransom, extortion, mail fraud.
Look up the word probabble. Break the words down. Probabble. Professional babbling. Okay, so babble means the utterance of an idiot or a child. See, this is where the words come into studying. And believe it or not, don't just go by the law stuff. Okay, go by your Webster's dictionaries or your dictionaries. Cross-reference a few dictionaries, and that's the thing. That's what they say. We have go ahead.
I can't find my blacks anyway, so I've got this big fat Webster's that's more than 4 inches thick, so I'm just using that.
That's actually the best way to go. That's actually the best way to go because you're not in their arena. You're not in their sandbox. You have stepped outside and you're self-governing. Okay? And Webster's goes back. Where do you think they get their definitions from?
Yeah.
Where do you think they got their definitions for these law books? Okay? Believe it or not, Webster's one of the top ones they used.
Oh, yeah. And I got to throw this in. It's like I grew up using the word ain't this, ain't that. And my mom used to get upset, that ain't no word. And then when it came in the dictionary, it was like, see, Mom, the word ain't here.
Yeah.
See, if you go by the original dictionaries before the 1930s, totally written, totally different than after the 1930s. And especially when they put in the 1940 Administration Rule Act.
So what was here's what they do.
I like the oldest books I can find. I've been reading this world history that was published in the 1800s, and you can it has a slant. It has a Christian slant, but it's definitely different than any modern version.
Well, that's like here in America, you see tires, T-I-R-E-S. Go to the British part, T-Y-R-E-S.
Yeah.
You see, that's just it. things have evolved. But the other one is, believe it or not, when they pull you over, right then and there, they're supposed to supply you with, do you want a lawyer? You see, that's what they're not doing. You see, they've taken the structure out. And
well, it's not a lawyer. Do you want counsel?
Right. And you see, that's the other one, is they've taken certain aspects out of it. That's why I find it so amusing that they do what they do, because here you're handcuffed, so you're being detained unlawfully.
Well, you're kidnapped and held for ransom at that point.
Right. Well,
because he's billing you for the kidnap at that point. He's billing you for his hourly wage at that point.
Well, didn't they used to, you say, okay, well, let's go see the magistrate, and, if it was like 2 a.m. and the cop says, well, I really ain't going to wake him up for what I got, go home.
Well, and that's the point. Go ahead.
Well, they changed that. And the reason they changed that, and I'll explain it to you, ironically, it actually leads back to like towing. Okay, because in the towing industry, you have to release a vehicle every 3 hours. Okay, so that's what really happened, is they had to have a magistrate on duty every 3 hours, and that's what happened. But in reality,
that goes back to that TV program when they in New York City when they had that. What the hell was the guy's name? He was a good actor. He was a magician too. Night Court.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Harry.
And people don't comprehend what bull in Night Court meant.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, that's why I always preach, step out of the movie, watch the production. You'll be amazed what you learn.
Well, and then what was Dan always involved in? Intercourse. See, people don't catch that. He was like a male whore. He really was. But yeah, that's just it. They want to trick you into believing that they have the authority. Okay, they do not have the authority. You are the authority. Okay, and here's what they don't tell you. So they give you the ticket. What's the ticket say on it? It says summons. It does not say, and then they want you to sign. Okay, what they don't tell you is you can flip that thing over. On the front side is the public. On the back side, it may have instructions. But on the back side is the negotiational situation for you. See, that's what people don't understand. When you're handed any kind of lease agreement, contract, document, or covenant, okay, on the front side is the public. On the back side is the private.
And that's where you can actually autograph, hand it back to them, here your paycheck is.
May I?
Believe it or not. Yeah,
go ahead, may I?
Yeah, when they do pull you over, aren't they supposed to give you 3 forms of ID to prove who they are?
Yes, and not only that, if they have a sidearm, they're supposed to prove they have a concealed license permit.
Yeah, I think it's, I remember those two. I just can't remember the third one. I know one is the driver's license, second one is the concealed handgun license, and the third one.
The other one is the proof that they passed their administrative rule stuff called public safety.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The public safety certificate. That means they're supposed to be under Constitution to public safety to protect you, not to extort money from you.
Okay, so let's throw in a little more information. If you get pulled over by a radar gun or LADAR gun, they're supposed to actually have tests on that. The other one is they're supposed to...
Oh, yeah, you want to get a copy of when they started it. They're supposed to run a test at each and every shift, and 50% into that shift, they have to get a printout and that they did it again. Go ahead.
So the other one is they have an FCC license for it. And each officer has to go through 24 to 48 hours of instruction on it. If they do not have that time in, it's null and void. The other one is they're handing you a contract. Learn how to sign your contract. If you box your name in, anything outside the box is really null and void. The other one is you can quote your UCC stuff, but if you quote your UCC stuff, you could get into a contract with them. That's why you've got to learn what's on the public side and what's on the private side. If you turn it over and you actually take a red marker and write on it right there in front of them, this will fire them up. I kid you not. And be prepared to get yanked and your window broken. Okay. But you can actually flip that thing over with a red marker and put in your offer contract is hereby acknowledged and refused, and give it back to them. And then in reality, you don't really have to write out an autograph on the back. You can initial it because you autograph the front. But it's best to autograph the back and then put your thumbprint on it. And that will fire them up like you've never seen. I mean, I've done some crazy stuff.
Couldn't imagine how that could be done. I've never done things like that myself.
Well, the ironic thing is I actually learned that from a judge.
I comprehend that because I used to be a court collector. And that was the one thing that I used to have fun doing. You know, that's where I started really putting all these pieces together. But, you know, I mean, I started getting it, and then I was able to start putting more and more pieces together, you know, after time. And that's the point, is that they'll walk you through certain things, but they don't want to cross that river to give you the rights to have a bridge, so that way you don't have to swim across. That way, if you have a bridge, it makes it easier, and they don't want to make that comfort for you.
The other one is...
May I?
Go ahead, may I?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to get clarification on now, when you say to do that, you know there's 3 copies. They're carbon copies. Are you doing it on the very first one? Or you
want to do it on all 3?
Yep. So here's how
all 3, because wait, hang on a second. Because the first copy is your copy. The second copy is their administration copy. The third copy is a registration to file in the corporation of the courtroom. So you've got, that's the one thing that when you do this, when they do that and you got the 3 copies, you want to certify, you want to have them all certified. And if you ask for them to have them all certified, you never hear from them.
The other one is if you can actually get it done within the first 3 days to get it turned in under certified mail with a green card, so you get the card returned to you, because then you have proof that it was sent by the mail. Okay? When you get that sent in with the first 3 days, seriously, you can literally write it up as your offer to contract is hereby refused. For I do not consent to these proceedings, and I do not want to be in a contract with you. And if you're going to offer a contract, and that's the other thing, where you're at, you have a zip code. Once again, that brings you into the UCC. That's a code. Any code is decipherable, but you don't know that, and I'm not going to give you that code to decipher. Okay, so when you do that, you want to make it in care of. And then you have to give them instructions on how to do this. This keeps you in the private. Okay, so when they send it back, you want it in care of. Okay, you put your name in care of, and the city and state situation is in care of underneath all that. Okay, then when you do the zip code, you want to literally have them put it in parentheses. Okay, or don't even have them put a zip code down. Because, believe it or not, they'll ask you when you're in a court of law, what's your residence? Okay, residence is an attachment. It's what's known as a bilateral contract by adhesion. And that's where you can get yourself a little messed up.
Well, that's why I always say I live in this territory.
Yeah. But the other one is that the zip code is actually, we're working on that one now, because the zip code is actually like your social security number. Okay, there's a way to actually use it to get yourself out of this situation. That's why we also tell people to file for themselves. You can do that there's a couple different ways you can do it. Okay, so if you have a copy of your birth in a Bible book from the year you were born, you can actually copy that and use that in your affidavit of live birth.
Or your baby book, because it's filed under that structure. That's why they stole my baby book, birth certificate, and everything. Well, my birth certificate had the original, was not it was original gold foil seal on it.
Well, that's the idea. You can also get a copy from the hospital, but you want to make sure that they have the embossment on it. You see, everything that is a document, these lease agreements, documents, contract covenants, okay, they'll have a seal on them. Now, from the courts, there will half the time be no embossing on it. That's the rough edge of the feel of the paper. That's where they stamped it.
And don't do a copy.
Right. Okay, copy is a counterfeit. Okay, and you'll find that a lot of these places, they'll put down, they'll stamp it, but it's an ink stamp. The other one is you can ask for the original copy, okay, the wet ink signature. They cannot produce that. That's where Chapter 48, Statute 48, Section 112 comes in, and 113. And that leads back to the Bankruptcy Act, Public Law 7310. But usually we try to use this Chapter 48, Statute 48, Sections 112 and 113. And then because he took you and he incarcerated you, okay, even if you had to wait for the magistrate, once again, Ed was correct on all that, that falls under his statute, as he's quoted before, 32 U.S.C. 1983. You want to look that up, 1985 and 1986. Okay, because that's where you can get your relief. Now, the difference here is there's remedy and relief, although the remedy is what you're looking for. And the sad, because the money is fake and fiat, there is no remedy unless it's made lawful. They cannot do that. Only the flesh and blood man or woman can do that. And that's why they want you to sign on that paperwork. What they don't tell you is the minute you sign that paperwork, they can copy that to any other piece of paper they want. And they can make any kind of creative bond from that. And that's why you always ask for the wet ink signature. Now, if they give you a copy, man, just lick your thumb and put it on that paper and swipe it. You'll know the difference between a signature or autograph than if they stamped it and copied it. And the reason being is because copied ink on paper has no pressure on it. When you put your autograph on anything or signature, okay, you will put pressure on the paper so it actually makes an embossing itself. So you see, that's where they kind of slip you up and they'll try to trick you up. And we're speaking from personal experience here.
Yes. Yes, a lot of bruising, too. Sometimes even broken bones.
So, and it's a very unique structure. It's not fun until you get your head wrapped around it. Once you get your head wrapped around it, you'll find yourself giggling to yourself because they're trying to trick you. It's all about tricks, sleight of hand.
Yeah, you know, Trixie?
Yeah.
Tricks are for kids.
You got it.
Yeah.
That's why, that's what they say on the box of cereal.
That's why I had to call him a silly rabbit earlier. And then that leads right back. I mean, they're trying to tell you something right there. Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Okay, well, think about it. They're actually telling you the truth there. You're going to go down a rabbit hole. And it's a messed up one. Believe it or not, the book Alice in Wonderland was written by a lawyer. Believe it or not, that the actual movie, The Wizard, okay, we'll walk you through this real quick. Her slippers in the book were not ruby. They were silver. It was all about the Bankruptcy Act of 1980. Dorothy was this scatterbrained child. She had no courage. Well, that's what they want. They don't want you to have any courage when you walk into this courtroom. You have to know who you are. Don't be fear of them. You got to remember, they're just freaking people like you. So,
no courage,
the other
no
one
brains, no heart.
Well,
Right.
That's the idea. But now here's the difference on it. So that's what they're telling you. That's why they call it the straw person. The straw man wanted a brain. They think you got no brains. What is the Tin Man? Well, he wanted a heart. But wait a minute now. Tin Man. But tax identification number is your Social Security number, also known as your exemption identification number. You see, there's three parts to everything. That's why you had the straw man, the Tin Man, and the coward. And then what did they find out? And what were they always trying to follow? The yellow brick road. What is the yellow brick road? Gold. And then when they pulled the curtain back, the supposed wizard, What was the wizard? He was playing tricks. He was behind the curtain, pulling the cloak back. The old man, the whole situation. Well, that's exactly what you got. The old man, Uncle Sam. See,
Well, ours
they've been
never
trying to
did
say-
give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have.
Yeah. Ah, yes, Neil Young.
And that was American.
Yeah,
was it?
songs
Oh,
do
yeah, that's
have
right.
a lot
Yeah.
of good meaning in them, but people don't get them.
A horse with no name. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I should have remembered that. Good morning, Vietnam. But you see, that's just it. You know, this is stuff that we figured out, and a lot of people have, and it's out there. One of the ones I suggest you read is one called The Corruption Society, and you want to look up Judge Dale. Good stuff.
Yeah, I like
also,
that.
There's also 3002Title28USC.
Oh, what the hell is the other? Carl Miller is another one to look up.
Yeah,
I love
Carl Miller.
Well, isn't
Yeah,
Carl
got it.
Miller Judge Dale?
No,
don't
Judge
think
Dale is actually, if you read Judge Dale stuff, you'll find out who Judge Dale is.
Yeah, I know.
Judge Dale was actually a foreigner.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just what happened with him was his brother got in trouble with the IRS, and when he started checking into the IRS, he found out things weren't quite what they are. That's where the 1099A. What's that?
I was just laughing.
That's where the 1099A, B, and C come in. When the courts get you, what they get you is under a 1099A. Believe it or not, you have the right to ask for the 3949A paperwork, the 211 paperwork, the W-9 forms, the 1099A and 1099C. Okay, and what it is, the 1099A, they get you to sign off on your contract if you have a lawyer or anything like that, and they try to force you into one nowadays. Okay? And the interesting thing on that one is the 1099A, the A stands for abandonment. You're abandoning your property. That's you. Okay? Now, we got a little spin going on with the GMEI and the LEI stuff. The GMEI is Global Marketing Entity Identifier. You're considered an entity. Okay? The legal, if you look at that, it'll actually say in there who's the who and then who owns whom. So right there, they're calling you a slave. Okay? Now,
And you can even type that in your dictionary, who owns who, and it'll come up.
Yeah, the other one that really gets interesting is that Trump has changed a lot of things. People don't comprehend what that man's done. If you read the 114th Congressional Committee and you read the 115th Congressional Committee and then House Resolution 3332, 241 through 249, okay, a lot of stuff in there, a lot of stuff. And they changed a lot of things over under Articles 28, 18, 16, and a few others. And when you read that, he has actually given a lot of your freedoms back. Okay? Now, he went to the G20 summit and the G7 summit, and that's where the LEI and GMEI come. And the sad part is you actually used to be able to get on there and type your Social Security number in, and it would tell you how many people are attached to you. Guy the other day flipped out. He was like, I have 878 people attached to me. I was like, yep. Like vultures. My mother's been dead for 9 years. There's 500. As of 2 weeks ago, there was 530. As of day before yesterday, 536 people trading her.
Yeah, me, I have 107,000 people.
We have a lady friend of ours. She's being traded, and we believe because she's married to a military man, she's got 118,000 on hers.
Right.
Oh,
3 relatives that have passed on, and between the 3 relatives that have passed on, there's over 1,200 attached to them. So you see, that's the thing. They consider you a dead entity. This leads back to the Bible where it says, what's that?
So is there a way that you can say, where's my cut?
Well, that's the whole
what we're
idea.
working on putting together so you could do this so you don't go to jail.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, that's what, I got to go on the 5th, for trial readiness. I'm gonna ask them if they're having jury trials.
Well, wait a minute. What are you going to trial for? What's your situation?
Yeah, really.
Driver's license.
Oh, that's
No
simple. The other point, didn't you get the email, or didn't I send that to you, where the Bar Association says you don't need a driver's license, and the attorney and judges or members of the Bar Association, they have to go buy it?
I've seen that. I think it was from you. Yeah, I've got a ton of stuff. I'm just
But see, what I'm suggesting to you on that is get that out, put it together, make an affidavit, put it into the court, and you're putting it to the judge as a question. Could you answer this question to me? Why would the Bar Association say this? And do you have a bar member? Look up his bar member in that state. Put his bar membership in it.
Well, do what the guy that wrote. Wait, you do what the guy.
Well, let him finish with his thought. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Do what the guy what?
Okay, so the guy with the vulture book. Okay, go to the Secretary of State of your state, and also go to the Secretary of State down in D.C. and ask for their oath of office. They don't have an oath of office. I've got
the judge I'm in front of. I've got a certified copy of her oath.
Is it in wet ink, or is it a copy paper?
Is it stamped with the embossment?
Oh, it's not the original, I'm sure. It's
yeah, but you have to go back and say this is false, this is fake evidence. See, you have to write that statement and go back before anything else. You got it? Now you send back a letter going, I need an actual factual stamp with embossment. This is not a certified copy.
Huh.
Check the wordage. Like the guy with the vulture book, he found an A in the wrong spot, and it changes the whole structure of the sentence. I'm serious, man.
I remember the vulture book, but that was a long time ago for me.
Yeah, but he's still here. I mean, the guy is still there, and that's what I'm saying. He's bringing out this stuff, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The other one is Thompson v. Smith, Virginia State, 1930. Lynchburg, Virginia. And then if you have any issues with your violation of Fourth Amendment right, where they did an improper search and seizure, okay, you go to Schimel versus California, 1969. And as of 2015, in the state of Virginia, Mason v. Virginia. Mason v. Virginia is a very interesting one. You want to hear how somebody got out of 28 ounces of pot in a backpack? They pulled him over for the sign in the mirror. The pulling over because it was the sign hanging from the mirror did not allow them to search the entire vehicle. You see, you got to really, when you get this stuff into your head, you can present it, but the best way to really do it is to file on yourself. Do the paperwork to get yourself free. Now, when you do that, right. Yeah, you have to do it. Go ahead.
No, I hear you. And I'm still studying on all that, and I don't have it in my head well enough yet.
Didn't you get a copy of what I filed in the newspaper, 3 full pages? Didn't I send that to you?
I don't know whether you did or not. I'm not regular on internet, so I have to go somewhere and then catch up and I
think I sent that to you like a year and a half ago.
No, not that long ago, because I haven't known you that long. I haven't known you more than a couple of months now.
Okay, I thought you were the one in New York City that I've dealt with.
No,
believe it or not,
I'm on Colorado. I met you through Santa.
Oh, that's right. Okay, gotcha. I'm sorry.
All right.
So,
but no, you send me a bunch of good stuff, and I've been reading on it and stuff, and I'm just I'm not too worried. I just I don't know. I mean, I'll have a bunch of questions. All right, but see, in
Colorado, type in Colorado the rights to travel versus statute.
It's called Don Quixote. Look it up.
Okay.
That's going to be under Anti-Corruption Society, and it's going to be in your bar stop on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long book, but it actually explains. And then there's another package that says...
Hang on a second. I'm going to write that down. Because I'm familiar. I've seen the Anti-Corruption Society before and all that. So I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
on their Judge. Well, the
Cut
other one
down
is on
the-
Judge Dale's. If you drop down Judge Dale stuff, okay, they actually have forms there, and you can send the form in. And what that form is asking is what corporation they work for. The other one is, if you look on Ed's site, you want to look up the Duns and Bradstreet numbers. Okay.
Yeah, I've been looking into. I was just trying to get the QSIP number, and that was a pain in the ass, and I haven't gotten that even that
Well,
yet.
the other one you could type in too.
Hang on a second.
Go ahead.
No, I want to write this down before I forget it. Go ahead.
So the other thing you want to type in is the state of Colorado nonprofit certification. They'll come up with your police departments, your law firms, and all that. They're nonprofit agencies. They can't do business.
Yeah. Because they're actually making.
You know what's interesting? I was down at the Secretary of State, and I was down there a few times. Like, years ago, I was down there and got a current copy of the Colorado Constitution, put out by the Secretary of State. And so I was down there, and I said, and I was looking up some oaths and stuff, and I said, hey, can I get a copy of the Colorado Constitution? Oh, we don't have that. So the next time I was there, I said, oh, can I get a copy of the Constitution? And, oh, well, that's downstairs. We'll have to send somebody down there. I said, well, that's great. Another little sidebar on that, and I got this from somebody on a different call, that the archives, which is a different building, a few blocks away, they have a copy of the Constitution for the United States of America with the original 13th, which is like, it's like, oh, cool. Next time I'm down there, I ought to get that too. But anyway, the judge had she did have an oath, and I got a certified copy, and that's good enough for me for right now. I signed across it. I accept this as a contract between you and I. But the prosecutors that I've been talking to, and these have all been young girls, and I say, oh, yeah, by the way, can I see a copy of your oath and bond? And, what? Who? And I have checked on them at the Secretary of State, which in Colorado, judges and DAs are supposed to have that stuff at the Secretary of State. Everybody else has their shit at the county clerk and recorder. Anyway, the last little young girl, she said, oh, it's on my computer, in front of a witness. So I'm going to ask her again, and I'm going to, other people on other calls have been talking about register a complaint with the State Bar Association, and if they get 3 complaints, that they have to go in front of like their own court. And
right. Well, anyhow, I'm looking at the clock. We've been going at this for over 3 hours.
Well, that's good enough.
So, and then I got to be respectful for the producer on this one.
Okay. All right, man. You guys have been very helpful, and I appreciate it.
Well, before you go, if you can look up Lighthouse Law Club. Lighthouse Law Club.
And that is on new.org and trackers.
Okay, Mark Emery has one, and there's 4 questions you can ask that usually gets them to put you out the door. Okay, and it really leads back to you have a trust. That's what the bond, your birth certificate is. It's a bond of trust. And they don't want to answer those questions because their contract is with the British government. And the bank, they're trying to cover the Bankruptcy Act. So you can ask those 4 questions.
Lighthouse Law Club, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is on new.org and trackers. And Mark does a wonderful deal, and he has a good one on bank foreclosure up there, too.
Cool, man. Hey, the local bar is open. The there's a guy playing piano for 24 hours for register money for charity. They said it was on YouTube, but I couldn't find it. But it is on Facebook. The Chicken Coop, Black Forest, Colorado. Drop in and look at this guy for a minute.
So, all right. Well, anyhow, let's go ahead. We're going to button it up because, like I said, we're going on, and I said we were going to end this about 40 minutes ago, and I mean, probably the guy is probably looking at me.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks, Ed.
No, thank you, guys. We would like to thank everybody for joining us. You know, go ahead, Chief. You got any final words tonight before I close it?
No. I just pray that everybody's having a good time, regardless of all this, craziness going on out here. Hopefully the great creator spirits and whatnot watch over you. Because past people that have gone on, trust me, they're probably your guardian angel standing next to you. And I'm hoping that our country heals here shortly soon. I really do, because it's not good for any of us. We don't need this stress. We don't need this aggravation. We need to put out the positive energy and the positive love out there and the peace. So with that, you all have a peaceful night and a peaceful week. Hopefully we'll see you again next Saturday.
Okay, thank you. We'd like to thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate your time. And that's the one thing about putting all this stuff together, education, so we know how to do our paperwork, so we know what's going on, so we don't get caught up in the middle of the corporation fantasy, and people who want to live in that area, that's your right, but don't bring us into your problems. We don't want to live in your craziness. We want to go hunting and fishing. We want to go enjoy the life. We want to watch the sunset and enjoy that. We don't want to sit there and have to look over our shoulder. So with that, may the Creator and Great Spirit bless you. May Mother bring you food and water and shelter. And remember, collect rainwater, grow food, because if you don't do it, you can always grab seeds and throw it around your city parks and stuff like that. And, fruit and vegetables grow really good. Fruit trees grow real good. Plant them in your parks, because when I grew up in the Bay Area, California, all the parks had fruit trees and fruit trees all around the parks. Some actually had vegetables planted around in certain areas of the park, and we used to look back and, I used to look back when I was growing up. What does that mean? What does that mean? And it didn't click to me until 30 years later, and that's the one thing that some of the people or forefathers thought about this, but then again, when they're being attacked and they're not able to have support and we're not supporting these people, that's the one thing that we are failing them and ourselves. With that, we'd like to say, may you have a blessed evening and good night. And the last words are coming from the producer.
Actually, I'd like
Is he there?
Well, thank him, thank the producer, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have this.
Thanks, producer.
I don't know what happened.
This session is
there?
no longer being recorded.
Oh.
Thanks for listening to the Evangelical episode. It is currently Saturday, May 30th, 2020. Disclaimers by Ed Johnson, and I just logged out of it because, honestly, I got tired. And so let them have fun, and we'll catch you next week.